Chapter 931, The Tea Party Begins. Chapter 931, The Tea Party Begins. In a short 20 years, Di'in had advanced from early stage to perfected nascent soul realm. This sort of cultivation speed was absolutely unimaginable. Nobody knew what sort of opportunities he had obtained. Even Su Zimo had not expected that Di'in would be able to rise against the tides and advance to such an extent after being suppressed by him once. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of something and frowned. If Di'in was already at perfected nascent soul realm 80 years ago, what's his cultivation now? Void reversion realm. Ji Qingtian replied, I heard that he broke through to the void reversion realm 50 years ago. I'm not sure what stage he's at now. Good, you have not disappointed me indeed. When Su Zimo heard that Di'in was so strong, he did not feel any fear at all. Instead, his battle intent surged and his eyes shone with a torrential aura. He had killed void reversion experts before. Gazing at his old friend, Ji Qingtian was filled with emotions. 100 years had passed. That strongest monster incarnate in history who was invincible among his peers and suppressed the foreign races had not changed. He was equally aggressive. He was equally domineering. He possessed the same arrogance. Only Su Zimo would dare to say something like that. However, I reckon that Di'in won't be appearing at this 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Ji Qingtian analyzed. Firstly, the 1,000 Crane Tea Party is a gathering of nascent soul paragons. He's already a void reversion and won't be interested. Secondly, Chaos Essence Sect will be able to settle everything for this tea party with Yi Tiancheng's presence alone. He's a monster incarnate not weaker than Di'in. Thirdly, Di'in doesn't know about your return either. Su Zimo's gaze was deep as he said faintly, it's all right, he'll definitely appear. Ji Qingtian's heart skipped a beat. Sensing the killing intent in Su Zimo's tone, he asked softly, you're not going to hide your identity anymore? We'll let nature take its course. Su Zimo said, many major factions will be gathered at this 1,000 Crane Tea Party that is hosted by a Dharma characteristic. There's a high chance I won't be able to hide my identity even if I want to. After sending Dao Lord Extreme Fire safely back to 100 Refinement Sect, it was no longer important whether Su Zimo hid his identity or not. Furthermore, he was already prepared for the worst. That his identity would be exposed. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, have you heard about the rumors of Leng Rou's marriage with Yi Tiancheng? Ji Qingtian nodded. Initially, I wasn't sure if Leng Rou was forced into this marriage. However, I'm almost certain now that Leng Rou has no choice. Earlier on, when he went to meet her, the two cultivators guarding the place did not even enter to report about it. It was clear that they had received some instructions. Otherwise, given his relationship with Leng Rou, she wouldn't have refused to meet him even once. Ji Qingtian thought for a moment and continued, Zimo, you don't have to worry too much. There's still a competition of talismans at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Leng Rou will definitely appear then. Since Di'in thought of such a despicable method to force me to appear, I'll do as he wishes. A shuddering killing intent emanated from Su Zimo as he said slowly, it's been 100 years. I want to see how much the paragons of Tianhuang mainland have grown. A moment later, Su Zimo retracted his killing intent and asked, by the way, where's Xiaoning? Has she been well all these years? Is she here for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party? Ji Qingtian had a strange expression at the mention of Xiaoning. He shook his head. Ever since Xiaoning and Night Spirit headed to the North region 100 years ago, they haven't returned to the sect. However, every once in a while, Xiaoning would send a message to the sect saying that she's safe. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. He missed Xiaoning the most after 100 years. To think that Xiaoning had not returned for 100 years. Thankfully, with Night Spirit by her side, she should not be in any danger. However, he did not know when they would meet again if he missed this opportunity. The two of them chatted for a long time after not seeing each other for 100 years. It was only until daybreak that Su Zimo reverted to his rough appearance and returned to his residence in 100 Refinement Sect. For the next 3 days, Zimo did not leave his residence. Almost all the major sects, factions, upper sects and aristocratic families of the Middle Continent have arrived. The 6 immortal sects of the Middle Continent, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Snowdrift Valley, Chaos Essence Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Sword Sect and Soaring Feather Sect, were all present. Perfected Lord Pang Lan and Hang Qiuyu caused quite a stir when they arrived. Many cultivators headed over to take a look at their glorious presence. When Chaos Essence Sect's Tiancheng arrived, an even greater commotion was caused. It was not only Thousand Crane Sect, almost all the cultivators of the major sects rushed over. It was said in the cultivation world that although Tiancheng had just entered the nascent soul realm and was only at early stage nascent soul, his combat strength was so strong that he could be conferred the title of number 1 perfected lord. That was a great title. It would be unprecedented for him to be conferred as the number 1 perfected lord at early stage nascent soul realm. Of course, when this title was first spread, there were naturally many nascent soul paragons who were indignant and challenged Tiancheng, but they were all killed one after another. Since then, the voices of opposition gradually disappeared. When Tiancheng arrived, even Nangong Ling and the other 2 could not help but run out to take a look. Only Zimo remained in his residence with his eyes closed, seemingly uninterested in the so-called paragons. Among the Buddhist monasteries, the 3 major monasteries of Hollow, Formless and Wisdom monasteries had already arrived at Thousand Crane Sect. Mingzhen's Depampura temple was located in the southern region and it was far away, so they did not partake in this. There were dozens of upper sects in the Middle Continent and they were all present. Peach Blossom Peak, Tyrant Emperor Mountain, 5 Elements Sect, Heavenly Sea God Sect, Sun Moon Residence, Flying Star Sect, Heavenly Net Dock, Refuge Pavilion, Black Frost Sect, Unparalleled Sword Sect, Great Change Academy, Traceless Temple, Black Yang Temple, Azure Cloud Monastery, 7 Luminaries Hall. On this day, the Thousand Crane Tea Party officially began. Many sects and cultivators set off one after another. Under the lead of the Thousand Crane Sect cultivators, they headed towards the Mystic Courtyard where the Mystic Tea Tree was located. On the way, Dao Bing Yuding explained, I heard that there are a total of 527 cups of Mystic Tea and only 5 cups of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. If one was close enough, they would be able to clearly see that at the top of the Mystic Tea Tree, there were 5 sparkling green tea leaves. Each tea leaf could only be brewed into a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. The Thousand Crane Tea Party is split into 2 parts. Dao Bing Yuding continued, the first part is the fight between the 4 unorthodox groups. They are the battle of formations, talismans, elixir and weapon refinement. The hearts of the 100 Refinement sect cultivators skipped a beat. The glory of the sect hinged on the weapon refinement competition in the first part. Dao Bing Yuding said, if nothing goes wrong, this weapon refinement competition should be ranked at the back of the 4. Junior Sister Lu, try your best to relax and perform well. I'll do my best. Lu Hanyan nodded. Dao Bing Yuding continued, the first part can be considered as an advantage to take care of our 4 unorthodox groups where the final victors of each segment will be able to drink a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. This is great for us. Ru Xian clapped her hands. Sister Han Yan, if you win, you can even have a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. Lu Hanyan merely smiled without saying anything. She knew very well that the chances of her winning this weapon refinement battle were less than 30%. The best case scenario would be a tie. Chapter 932, Tiancheng. Chapter 932, Tiancheng. Dao Bing Yuding said, there's only a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea left. That's the second part, the fight between paragons. The final cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea is extremely precious and only the number 1 perfected lord of the Middle Continent will be qualified to drink it. Nangong Ling lamented, I wonder if it's Tiancheng or perfected Lord Pang Lan. I feel that only those top 2 of the phenomenon ranking are qualified to compete for the 5th cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. I'll bet on Tiancheng. Ru Xian said before turning to ask, Little Granduncle Master, what do you think? Su Zimo replied indifferently, I'm betting that neither of them will get to drink it. Ah, why? Ru Xian asked curiously. Su Zimo smiled and said in a seemingly casual manner, because I won't allow it. Little granduncle master, you're bragging again. When she heard that, Ru Xian giggled as well and did not take it to heart. Right then, everyone from 100 Refinement sect entered the courtyard with the 1,000 Crane sect cultivators. The moment they stepped into the mystic courtyard, everyone from 100 Refinement sect felt a momentary silence in the initially noisy courtyard. Most of the sects and factions in the courtyard were already in their seats. The gathering of nascent soul paragons was a spectacular sight. This was a rare cultivation event after the phenomenon ranking. At that moment, when 100 Refinement sect entered the mystic courtyard, everyone glared at them with burning gazes. 100 Refinement sect is here. I heard that a ruthless character from 100 Refinement sect defeated a few paragons consecutively and has already angered many factions. What's the use of being ruthless? Which of the paragons here isn't ruthless? Fufu, 100 Refinement sect is already nearing its end and is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. 100 Refinement sect was already in a precarious situation, they were already at the cusp of the storm the moment they appeared. The 1,000 Crane Tea Party was held once every 1,000 years. Most of the 100 Refinement sect cultivators had never experienced such a situation before. Coupled with the fact that their sect was in a precarious situation, many of them felt uneasy. Even Nangong Ling and the other two became nervous. Right now, the only person who could remain calm was Su Zimo. In that short period of time, he could already feel many sharp gazes lingering on him with cold killing intent. Su Zimo was indifferent and could not be bothered. Fellow Taoists of 100 Refinement sect, this way please. A 1,000 Crane sect cultivator pointed to an area not far away and said in a deep voice. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect looked over and their expressions darkened. That was where the 4 unorthodox groups were located. However, apart from Ancient Array sect, Elixir Yang sect and 1,000 Crane sect, there was another group of cultivators standing there. The robes of those cultivators were dark and there was a ball of hellfire tattooed on their sleeves. Hellfire Hall. The tea party had yet to truly begin and the seats occupied by 100 Refinement sect and Hellfire Hall were already at odds with one another. It was extremely intense. This was originally a region where the 4 unorthodox groups were stationed. Now that 5 sects had appeared, their intentions were self-evident. The loser of this weapon refinement battle would lose their rights to stay in this region. Dao Bing Yuding had a grim expression and did not say anything. Since Hellfire Hall was standing here, it was clear that they had obtained 1,000 Crane sect's approval. Even if they protested, nothing would happen. Hellfire Hall's foundation was already established. Their Void Reversion leader is Dao Lord Qian Feng. Behind him is Ming Han, the person who's fighting Senior Sister Lu. Ru Xian whispered. Su Zimo swept his gaze and noticed Ming Han immediately. The cultivator was very young and exuded a cold aura. Raising his chin slightly, he looked extremely arrogant. Before long, everyone from 100 Refinement sect assumed their seats. That should be perfected Lord Panglan. Nangong Ling looked in the direction of Heavenly Dipper sect and saw a nascent soul standing at the front. His long hair fluttered and his eyes were long and narrow. At that moment, he was looking at Su Zimo with a faint smile. That's Hang Chuyu. Nangong Ling looked to the other side. Su Zimo looked over. He had not seen Hang Chuyu for 100 years and the latter had changed quite a bit. He was now at peak late-stage nascent soul realm. Although he was sharp, his aura was restrained. It was clear that he was in an advanced realm of the Sword Dao compared to Jian Wuzong. Zephyr Thunder Palace, Snowdrift Valley. Nangong Ling and Ru Xian introduced the paragons of the immortal and Buddhist sects to Su Zimo. Su Zimo was distracted and merely nodded occasionally as a response. Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the crowd and many cultivators shouted with shining eyes. Not far away in the skies, roughly 1,000 Chaos Essence sect cultivators sped over in a mighty manner. The most eye-catching thing was the 9WIRMS at the front. The 9WIRMS rode side by side, soaring through the clouds with rumbling auras. Together, they dragged a gigantic throne over slowly. The WIRM was a pure-blooded ferocious beast. It was already a great opportunity for ordinary cultivators if they could obtain one. But now, the 9WIRMS were controlled by a single person. Look! Yi Tiancheng is here. How spectacular! As expected of the number 1 perfected lord. Seated on the throne was an extremely handsome cultivator. He was young and his eyes were closed, as though he was taking a nap. He exuded an invincible aura that swept through everything. Surrounding the throne were 9 extremely beautiful women. Some of them were playing flutes, some were tossing flower petals, and while others fanned gently with feather fans. The most frightening thing was that the 9 women followers were also at nascent soul realm. In fact, there was even a woman at perfected nascent soul realm. Even at his cultivation realm, she was still willing to be the servant of the cultivator on the throne. That was proof of how terrifying he was. Chaos Essence Sect and the top of the phenomenon ranking, Yi Tiancheng. His appearance attracted countless gazes. Indeed, no one could match such a grand display. Nangong Ling could not help but sigh emotionally and said in admiration, as expected of the number 1 perfected lord. No one can match up to his grandeur. When Yi Tiancheng appeared, all the cultivators present, including void reversions, were shocked. Even perfected Lord Pang Lan, who was at the top of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago and was said to be halfway to void reversion realm, had a grim expression. Su Zimo was the only one who did not blink the entire time. Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were even more surprised when they saw that. It was truly hard for them to imagine that there were still cultivators who could remain calm in the face of Yi Tiancheng's aura. As expected of one of the great 2 paragons of Chaos Essence Sect. Their sex rise is inevitable. No wonder Thousand Crane sect master worked so hard to facilitate this marriage alliance. Yi Tiancheng's potential is limitless and he has a high chance of becoming an emperor in the future. In the blink of an eye, everyone from Chaos Essence Sect arrived in the courtyard. With a ferocious gaze, the 9WIRMS surveyed their surroundings and let out a series of growls. Many cultivators retreated with fearful expressions. Be quiet. Yi Tiancheng opened his eyes and said slowly. When the 9WIRMS heard that, they quietened down instantly and sprawled on the ground obediently like 9 little snakes. It's only been a few days since we last met. Brother Yi, you look way more amazing than before. Right then, a Hellfire Hall cultivator walked towards Yi Tiancheng and cupped his fists with a smile. Nangong Ling frowned. It's Ming Han. How does he know Yi Tiancheng? Furthermore, it seems like their relationship isn't bad, Ru Xian murmured with a worried expression. If Ming Han was on good terms with Yi Tiancheng, did that mean that Chaos Essence Sect would stand on the side of Hellfire Hall for this Thousand Crane tea party? Furthermore, they would intercede for Hellfire Hall. Chapter 933, Ruthless. Chapter 933, Ruthless. Brother Ming Han, how have you been? Yi Tiancheng stood on his throne without getting up. Or rather, none of the cultivators in the mystic courtyard were worthy of him standing up to welcome them. Yi Tiancheng waved his hand gently and the 9WIRMS in front of him understood. They opened up a path and allowed Ming Han to enter. Yi Tiancheng sat on his throne high and mighty. Ming Han stood below. Even so, that was enough to make many cultivators envious. To be able to have a friendly relationship with Yi Tiancheng and converse with him at such a close distance was already a great honor for many cultivators. The atmosphere on the side of 100 Refinement sect was a little depressing. The closer Ming Han and Yi Tiancheng were, the worse the situation for 100 Refinement sect was. A moment later, Dao Bing Yuding turned around and consoled Lu Hanyan, junior sister Lu, you don't have to worry. As long as you win the weapon refinement competition and salvage the reputation of the sect with pride, it wouldn't matter even if Ming Han is acquainted with Yi Tiancheng. Yes. Lu Hanyan nodded and pursed her lips in silence. Su Zimo sighed internally. Although Dao Bing Yuding's intention was to console her, his words clearly gave Lu Hanyan even more pressure. Right then, the doors to the inner courtyard of Mystic Courtyard opened and a group of beautiful female cultivators walked out. Their figures and appearances varied, but they were all unique in their own rights. The woman at the front wore a white dress that fluttered in the wind. She was extremely beautiful and had an indifferent expression. There was no human aura around her and she looked like a fairy that had descended onto the mortal realm. However, her gaze was cold and she resembled an iceberg, causing many cultivators to shrink back. Wow! Fairy Leng Ro has appeared. Truly peerless and devastatingly beautiful. The crowd gasped. Although her entrance was not grand, the commotion caused by Leng Ro's appearance was no less than Tiancheng. Raising his head, Su Zimo looked at the woman who was walking over slowly with a warm gaze and a sincere smile. After not seeing her for 100 years, Leng Ro had grown increasingly cold and aloof. Su Zimo was delighted to see that his old friend was fine. Although Leng Ro was in a predicament right now, he was already here and naturally wouldn't let his old friend suffer any grievances. Su Zimo looked at Leng Ro, lost in his thoughts. At the side, Ru Xian was displeased. Humph. Pouting her lips, Ru Xian glared at Su Zimo and snapped, I thought that you would be able to keep your cool. But you're the same when you see a beauty. Hey, be careful. Your saliva will flow out soon. Lu Hanyan frowned slightly, feeling surprised. In her impression, Su Zimo was not that sort of a playboy. She was a beauty herself. Back when they first met, Su Zimo had never revealed such a gaze or smile. Furthermore, if even Yi Tiancheng could not move Su Zimo, how could this fairy Leng Ro possess such charm? Lu Hanyan did not understand. Furthermore, she noticed that Su Zimo was not looking at fairy Leng Ro with infatuated or lustful eyes. Su Zimo looked at fairy Leng Ro with a clear and gentle gaze. Lu Hanyan glanced sideways at Yi Tiancheng who was not far away. At that moment, Yi Tiancheng was also looking at Leng Ro. However, Yi Tiancheng's gaze was condescending and filled with dominance, causing Lu Hanyan to feel uncomfortable. Leng Ro, I'm here. Yi Tiancheng stood up slowly and looked at Leng Ro with a smile. He had a haughty expression as though he was waiting for Leng Ro to make a reply. Unfortunately, Leng Ro did not even look at him. The situation was awkward. The clamor of the crowd around them died down as well. A cold glint flashed through Yi Tiancheng's eyes before he chuckled with a carefree expression. Seemingly unconcerned, he sat back down. Foo-foo. Out of nowhere, a cultivator could not help but laugh. Yi Tiancheng's expression turned cold. A nascent soul maidservant who was initially standing beside him leaped into the crowd. Her sleeves fluttered and she thrust forward with a dagger that possessed a cold glint. The cultivator was flustered and caught off guard. He had not expected anybody to dare attack someone else in front of so many void reversions of Thousand Crane sect. Furthermore, although the nascent soul realm woman looked weak, her attack was extremely decisive and ruthless. She did not hold back at all when she stabbed the man's glabella. Cultivators who could attend the tea party were no ordinary people. Clang! Slapping his storage bag, the man drew out a long saber and slashed viciously at the incoming dagger. Clang! The saber and dagger collided. The man shuddered. Although the nascent soul realm woman was skinny, the power she released was extremely shocking. He could not hold his saber properly. All of a sudden, a cold glint flashed through the nascent soul realm woman's eyes as she changed her moves extremely quickly. With a twist of her wrist, the dagger's edge slid down along the saber and sliced off 4 of the cultivator's fingers. Ah! With a tragic cry, the person staggered in retreat with a bloodied palm. Unexpectedly, the nascent soul realm woman did not hold back at all. With a cold expression, she closed in and threw her dagger. The dagger circled around the person's neck nimbly before returning to her hand. Poof! A gigantic head fell. In his shock, the nascent soul's essence spirit left his body. However, the essence spirit did not manage to escape far before it convulsed in the cold wind. Its light dimmed rapidly and dissipated in the void, dying on the spot. The essence spirits of nascent souls were way too weak and would die before long without their bodies. The huge mystic courtyard was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Nobody expected the nascent soul to be killed on the spot because of a single laugh. Furthermore, Tiancheng was not the one who attacked personally. Instead, his maidservant sliced off the person's head with 2 slashes. Normally, cultivators were forbidden from fighting to the death within Thousand Cranes sect. Even if it was a fight between the paragons of the Tea Party, they would only stop when things were right and no killing was allowed. Who would have thought that Tiancheng would be so domineering? Before the Thousand Crane Tea Party even began, it was already stained with blood. The courtyard was filled with a murderous aura and all the cultivators were silent. Tiancheng finally opened his mouth and said lazily, Yi Qi merely wanted to teach him a lesson and had already held back. He was the one who courted death and chose to release his essence spirit. She can't be blamed for that. Yi Qi was the name of that nascent soul maidservant. To be precise, the 9 maidservants had no names but numbers, from Yi to Yi Jiu. When the void reversions of Thousand Cranes sect heard that explanation, they frowned but did not say anything, acknowledging his reason in silence. The hearts of the cultivators turned cold. Tiancheng's words were completely unreasonable. By beheading a nascent soul's head, Yi Qi destroyed the nascent soul's physical body. Once his head was severed, his blood qi would dry up before long. Even if that person's essence spirit did not leave his body and resided within his withered head, it would not be able to hold out for long and would still die. Yi Qi's attack was no different from killing that person. Everyone understood that logic. However, the void reversions of Thousand Cranes sect acknowledged it. This incident was also proof of Thousand Cranes sect's attitude towards Tiancheng. Tisk, tsk, tsk. The number 1 of the phenomenon ranking sure is impressive. Right then, another mocking laughter sounded from the courtyard. Chapter 934, Reunion of 5. Chapter 934, Reunion of 5. The crowd was shocked. Earlier on, someone was killed on the spot by Tiancheng's maidservant just because he laughed. Even Thousand Cranes sect did not step in and acknowledged the act in silence. To think that someone would dare to speak at this moment. Furthermore, this time round, he was openly mocking Tiancheng and challenging the latter's authority. Many cultivators realized that someone was about to die. When he heard that voice, Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he could not help but smile. To think that he would be here as well. Ji Qingtian looked around in shock and joy. Initially, Ling Ro had a cold expression. However, when she heard that voice, her expression changed slightly and her cold eyes flashed with warmth. Tiancheng narrowed his eyes and surveyed his surroundings. Initially, the 9 maidservants beside him frowned and scanned the crowd. However, they were hesitant and did not move for a long time. When that voice sounded earlier on, it was erratic and difficult to determine its direction. None of them could be certain where it came from. Fufu, what are you squinting at? Look at that silly look of yours. The mocking voice sounded once again. This time round, the provocation was even stronger and it was a personal attack. Even an ordinary person would not be able to take such a provocation, not to mention Tiancheng, who was the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking and lauded as the number 1 perfected lord. Swoosh. Tiancheng stood up with a murderous aura. His glabella shone and he released his massive spirit consciousness, enveloping the entire courtyard. A moment later. He did not move still and had a grim expression. He did not discover anything. After his spirit consciousness descended, the voice seemed to have vanished into thin air and was hidden as well. Even the void reversions present could not find the person who spoke, let alone Tiancheng. Tiancheng took a deep breath and retracted his spirit consciousness slowly with a dark gaze before returning to his seat. That scared me. Yi Tiancheng had just retracted his spirit consciousness but had yet to even touch his seat when the mocking voice sounded once more. It's not that I want to say this, but Chaos Essence Sect is really arrogant. You can't take it when someone laughs. Now that you can't find me, are you going to explode from anger? Su Zimo snickered internally. To think that little fatty would be even more mischievous after 100 years. Furthermore, it had to be said that little fatty's concealment technique was extremely brilliant. Even Su Zimo could only vaguely determine little fatty's location with his 6 powerful senses. Little fatty kept moving through the crowd. However, his body seemed to be covered with a treasure that concealed his aura that no one could discover. Furthermore, he moved very slowly and carefully. Who is this coward that is hiding in the darkness? Yi Tiancheng's expression darkened as he said slowly, "Show yourself if you dare." "No, I don't dare to, I'm timid." Little fatty replied, "You kill people at the drop of a hat and Thousand Cranes Sect doesn't care. Who wouldn't be afraid?" Not only was he mocking Yi Tiancheng for killing the innocent, he was also mocking Thousand Cranes Sect. Many void reversions of Thousand Cranes Sect turned scarlet. Yi Tiancheng closed his eyes and suddenly shut his mouth, as though he had given up on searching. After a while, little fatty asked again, "What are you doing there? Are you asleep?" All of a sudden, Yi Tiancheng opened his eyes and killing intent burst forth. In a flash, he leaped into the crowd and hollered coldly, "Get the hell out." The cultivators dispersed in shock. There was only a black-robed figure standing on the spot, seemingly scared out of his wits. Boom! Yi Tiancheng's fist landed heavily on that person's chest. The person's clothes were torn and he was sent flying. His chest was pierced but strangely, no blood flowed out. Bang! The person fell to the ground and rolled a few times before stopping. Everyone focused their attention. It was not a person at all, but a puppet made from superior-grade black iron. The puppet was sprawled on the ground with its back facing everyone. There were a few words written on its back, "The one who hit me is an idiot." Ha 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 ha. This time round, the cultivators could no longer hold it in and burst into laughter. Su Zimo laughed as well. It turned out that little fatty was not the only one. There was also the foolish Shijian who joined Puppet Sect. They were all here. When she saw that, Leng Ro pursed her lips emotionally. When her old friends heard about her marriage with Yi Tiancheng, they knew that it might be a trap, but they still rushed over without hesitation. It was the case for Ji Qingtian. It was the same for Little Fatty and Shijian. Leng Ro was not a sentimental person to begin with. However, at that moment, she felt her nose sting and her eyes reddened. Yi Tiancheng's expression turned extremely grim. In fact, he even had a thought to kill all the cultivators laughing at that instant. However, he knew that it was unrealistic. Even though he was the top of the phenomenon ranking and #1 perfected lord, even he could not do that. Stop fooling around. Right then, a soft shout sounded from afar. 3 graceful figures appeared in the air with powerful auras and an unrestrained might. 3 Dharma characteristic Tao lords. Although the 3 female cultivators looked like they were in their middle ages, they were still beautiful and exuded a mature aura that no young girl could possess. The female cultivator in the lead was the sect master of Thousand Cranes Sect, Tao Lord Lan Yu. The 2 beside her were elders of Thousand Cranes Sect. Tao Lord Lan Yu swept her gaze across the crowd and said indifferently, "If the 2 of you are here for the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Thousand Cranes Sect will naturally welcome you. However, if you are here to cause trouble, don't blame me for chasing you out." No matter how brilliant Little Fatty and Shijian were, they could not hide from the spirit consciousness detection of a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Little Fatty and Shijian sneaked over to the side of Thousand Cranes Sect before revealing themselves. The 2 of them made faces at Yi Tiancheng. At that moment, Thousand Cranes Sect master was present. No matter how strong Yi Tiancheng was, he would not dare to start a massacre right in front of Thousand Cranes Sect master. Pretty sister Sect master, please don't chase us out. Little Fatty greeted Dao Lord Lan Yu with a grin. Although Dao Lord Lan Yu was expressionless, she was delighted when he addressed her as pretty sister sect master. Although she looked like she was only middle-aged, she had already lived for thousands of years. How could she not be happy when she heard a 100-year-old child call her a pretty sister? Little Fatty said, "Pretty sister sect master, Yi Tiancheng even dared to kill someone in your territory. If you chase us out, he'll definitely kill us. A smiling person will not be the target of attacks." Furthermore, Little Fatty had a sweet tongue. Moreover, Little Fatty and Shi Jian were also the successors of Tomb sect and Puppet sect. Perfected Lord Lan Yu naturally had her reservations. She said, "It's good that you guys know the situation. Given your reputations, you're qualified to drink a cup of mystical tea." Pausing for a moment, Perfected Lord Lan Yu looked at the two of them warningly and said word by word, "Remember, don't cause trouble for me." Shi Jian was still in a foolish daze and stood squarely in silence. Little Fatty chuckled and let it pass. With a smile, Leng Ro beckoned to the two of them. "Come over here. Call Brother Ji." "Huh, that's what I was waiting for." Ji Qingtian burst into laughter and walked out of the crowd. 100 years later, the four of them finally reunited. To be precise, it was the five of them. Zimo sat on the side of 100 Refinement sect and did not make a move, nor did he remind Leng Ro and the others. Spirit consciousness transmissions would cause spirit consciousness fluctuations. At that moment, if he were to send a voice transmission, it would definitely attract the attention of others, and there was no need for that. Chapter 935, I'm Not Willing. Chapter 935, I'm Not Willing. "So, it's you two." Yi Tiancheng had already returned to his throne and said with a sinister smile, "Good, very good. Let's see how long you two can hide in Thousand Crane sect." "Pretty sister sect master, look." Little Fatty complained immediately, "How dare he raise his voice in front of you? He's really looking down on you." When he heard that, Yi Tiancheng was so angry that he wanted to rush into the crowd and tear Little Fatty into pieces. "That's enough." Dao Lord Lan Yu waved it off and ignored Little Fatty, declaring loudly, "Everyone, welcome to Thousand Cranes sect as guests for this tea party. The tea party is mainly divided into two parts. I'm sure everyone already knows about it, so I won't elaborate any further. First, it will be a formation battle. Second, the competition for elixir refinement. Third, the competition for talismans. Fourth, the most important thing for this tea session is the weapon refinement fight between 100 Refinement sect and Hellfire Palace." It was as everyone had expected. Thousand Cranes sect had arranged for the highly anticipated weapon refinement battle to be held at the end. Zimo glanced at Ming Han of Hellfire Hall and Lu Hanyan before shaking his head slightly. They were clearly in different mental states. Ming Han and Yi Tiancheng chatted merrily with relaxed expressions. Lu Hanyan, on the other hand, lowered her head slightly and clenched her fists in silence. Zimo could tell that Lu Hanyan was under immense pressure and was starting to get nervous. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He was a weapon refinement master and could refine spirit weapons. But right now, both parties were competing on the refinement of dermic weapons. The difference between spirit and dermic weapons was just a single word, but the difference between them was worlds apart. Although Dao Lord Extreme Fire had already imparted many techniques and secret skills of weapon refinement to Zimo, he had never tried them. There was no such thing as an epiphany for weapon refinement, it required countless attempts and tempering. He had to put in a lot of effort in that regard. It had only been 3 months since Dao Lord Extreme Fire imparted these things to him, and he had no time to practice them. The tea party had already begun. The first match was a battle of formations. The rules were simple. Ancient Array sect would send out a cultivator. As for the other sects and factions, including the immortal and Buddhist sects, upper sects, aristocratic families, and even itinerant cultivators, as long as there was an formation master who could defeat this cultivator from the Ancient Array sect, it would be considered as a victory. If no one could defeat the Ancient Array sect cultivator, it would be Ancient Array sect's victory. Although the rules were simple, it revealed the sect's confidence and foundation as one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Disciples of the Ancient Formations sect would be able to take on all challenges pertaining to formations. The final victor would be personally conferred the title of Great Master by Dao Lord Lan Yu. For example, the final victor of the formation battle would become a Great Formation Master. The final victor of the Elixir Refinement competition would become a Great Elixir Refinement Master. A total of 4 Great Masters would be decided for the 4 battles. All of them would be eligible for a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. Array formations were deduced from a gigantic sand table and could be set up once a cultivator's spirit consciousness entered. Su Zimo had studied formations before as well. In fact, he had not abandoned it all these years. That was because for every deeper level of the Illumination Sword formation, not only would the number of flying swords required increase, he would also have to comprehend the profoundness of the formation. Only, Su Zimo's Illumination Sword formation was stuck at level 3 and could no longer advance. However, he had long comprehended the level 4 formation. It was just that he did not have any dermic swords compatible for it. Level 4 Illumination Sword formation required 36 dermic swords. Furthermore, if he wanted to set up the formation successfully, the weight, length and shape of the 36 dermic swords had to be similar. Su Zimo did not know how to refine dermic weapons. It was absolutely impossible for him to gather 36 similar dermic swords. Therefore, his Illumination Sword formation was already set aside after he entered Nascent Soul Realm. The further the sword formation progressed, the more flying swords were required. At level 9, a total of 81 flying swords were required. Although the might of the Illumination Sword formation was shocking, it had not been passed down. Even among Ancient Array sect cultivators, not many would be able to recognize it. That was one of the reasons. Since he had nothing to do, Su Zimo went to the sand table to watch the formation battle. About 4 hours later, the result was out. In the end, Perfected Lord Yen Bai of Ancient Array Sect won. Perfected Lord Yen Bai laid down a massive formation and trapped more than 100 formation masters in succession. None of them managed to escape. It was a dazzling achievement. Grant the tea. Dao Lord Lan Yu smiled and waved her hand gently. A tender green tea leaf at the top of the mystic tea tree floated down and landed in the teacup. The elder beside her retrieved fresh spring water and boiled it with dermic powers, turning it into a ball of water that rolled into the teacup. Shing! The fragrance of tea spread rapidly, making one feel relaxed. Given that effect just by smelling the fragrance of the tea from afar, one could tell how precious the supreme grade mystic tea was. The Thousand Cranes sect elder brewed the tea personally and sent it over. Perfected Lord Yen Bai was overwhelmed by the favor and received the supreme grade mystic tea. He looked at the jade green tea and gulped it down with complete disregard of its heat. The moment the tea entered his stomach, Perfected Lord Yen Bai shuddered and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes. He started cultivating and meditating instantly. Ancient Array sect cultivators hurried over and huddled around to protect him from being disturbed. After that was the competition for Elixir Refinement. All the Elixir Refinement Masters in the Middle Continent could take part in the challenge. An Elixir Yang sect cultivator would be the one to welcome the challenges. The Elixir Refinement Master that Elixir Yang sect sent out was none other than Tang Yu, who liked to dress up as a man and had crossed paths with Su Zimo's group in the ancient battlefield. It was thanks to Tang Yu's recommendation that Xiaoning and Ji Qingtian were able to join Elixir Yang sect back then. After so many years, Tang Yu was still the same as before. Dressed as a pale-faced scholar, she looked like a handsome young master from afar. Su Zimo could not help but think of Xiaoning. If Xiaoning was still around, she would have a chance to fight for the title of a great Elixir Refinement Master given her attainments in Elixir Refinement. Su Zimo told himself quietly. The duration of the Elixir Refinement competition was shorter and the outcome was determined within 2 hours. As expected, Tang Yu had obtained the title of Great Elixir Refinement Master. Grant the tea. Without hesitation, Dao Lord Lan Yu plucked another leaf from the tip of the illumination tea tree. The Thousand Cranes sect elder brewed the supreme grade mystic tea and sent it over. In the blink of an eye, the third round, the talisman battle, was about to begin. This time round, Thousand Cranes sect was the host and naturally could not afford to lose. The cultivator they sent was Leng Ro. Go on. Given your strength and talent, it should be easy for you to win the title of a great talisman master. Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Leng Ro and nodded with a smile, pleased with her disciple. Clenching her fists slightly, Leng Ro swept her gaze across Ji Qing Tian, Little Fatty, and Shi Jian. When she saw their encouraging gazes, she finally made up her mind. Master. Leng Ro arrived before Dao Lord Lan Yu and knelt down. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. What's wrong? Get up and speak. Master, if I can obtain the title of a great talisman master, I don't need anything. I only have one request and I hope you can agree to it. Still kneeling on the ground, Leng Ro said slowly with a resolute gaze. Perfected Lord Lan Yu seemed to have realized something and her expression darkened. After hesitating for a long time, she said, Tell me. I'm not willing to become Dao companions with Yi Tiancheng. Leng Ro said that statement word by word with a resounding conviction. The moment she said that, the crowd fell into an uproar. Chapter 936, Greeting Gift. Chapter 936, Greeting Gift. I'm not willing. No one could imagine how much pressure Leng Ro had to endure or how difficult it was for her to say those words in front of countless paragons of various sects and factions. That short statement was even more powerful than a hysterical shout. She was fighting against authority. She was defying her master's orders. Dao Lord Lan Yu's expression turned terrible as she glared at Leng Ro silently with suppressed rage. That silence was even scarier than a stern rebuke. Nobody knew what would happen next. By going against a sect master during such an important event, Leng Ro was not only going against Thousand Cranes sect, but also Dao Lord Lan Yu's personal dignity. It was also possible for Dao Lord Lan Yu to cripple Leng Ro and disavow her as a disciple in a fit of anger. On the other side, Yi Tiancheng narrowed his eyes and glared at Leng Ro's back view with a dark expression. Now that Leng Ro rejected the marriage proposal right in front of him, he was thoroughly embarrassed. At that moment, countless cultivators were gloating internally in secret and wanted to make a joke out of him. Silence filled the mystic courtyard. Even the sound of wind vanished. The air seemed to have frozen. Right in front of Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze, Leng Ro knelt on the ground and gritted her teeth. Enduring the immense pressure, she raised her head and looked into Dao Lord Lan Yu's eyes. Under that pressure, even her petite body trembled slightly. After a long time, Dao Lord Lan Yu spoke slowly and expressionlessly, Take back what you said earlier on. I'll pretend that I didn't hear it. The immense pressure almost destroyed Leng Ro. Ji Qing Tian stood out. Little Fatty and Shi Jian stood out as well. The three of them arrived beside Leng Ro silently and stood shoulder to shoulder with her. As though she had received immense encouragement, Leng Ro took a deep breath and looked at Dao Lord Lan Yu, saying word by word, I'm not willing. She refused to back down. Bloody hell. Enraged, Dao Lord Lan Yu slammed the table and stood up. The thunderous wrath of the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord was not only felt by Leng Ro, who was kneeling on the ground, but bystanders as well. Su Zimo remained silent and watched coldly from the sidelines. This was Thousand Cranes sect and there were 3 Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present. He did not dare to attack directly and start a massacre. Otherwise, not only would he die here, he would also implicate Leng Ro and the others. Please don't be angry, sect master. Roer might have been confused for a moment. An elder standing beside Dao Lord Lan Yu said softly. She looked at Leng Ro and shook her head, indicating for the latter to not go against the sect master. Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Leng Ro and recalled the interactions she had with her disciple over the years. Gradually, her gaze softened. No matter what, Leng Ro was her proudest disciple. Dao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and said earnestly, Leng Ro, I know that you're unwilling, but you have to know that I'm doing this for your own good. When he heard that, little fatty did not have much of an expression on his face. However, he sneered internally, for her own good? Fufu, at the end of the day, it's only for yourself and the sect. I've lived for thousands of years and I've been in the same situation before. What don't I know? Dao Lord Lan Yu continued, although you don't have much feelings towards Yi Tiancheng now, as long as you two become Dao companions and stay together by one another for a long time, feelings will definitely blossom. The path of cultivation is long and arduous. It's not easy to find a Dao companion that you can spend the rest of your life with. You must cherish the opportunity before you. Little fatty coughed gently. Pretty sister sect master, that's not right. If they don't have feelings for each other, how are they going to stay together by one another? He continued with a chuckle, pretty sister sect master, I'm going to say something that I hope you don't blame me for. Will you be willing to stay by my side right now? You can lead a horse to water but you can't make him drink. Shi Jian finally blurted out after holding it in for a long time. Haha. Many cultivators in the crowd could not help but burst into laughter. Ru Xian could not stop giggling as well. Those two are so interesting. Insolent. Dao Lord Lan Yu glared at little fatty and did not bother with him. She then said to Leng Ro, I know that you might have heard some rumors about a marriage alliance with Yi Tiancheng or a scheme to lure someone out. However, let me tell you, those are rumors and malicious slander. Not necessarily. Little fatty muttered, there's no smoke without fire. Yi Tiancheng is ruthless and can do anything. Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze shifted and her expression darkened. She glared at the three of them and said coldly, I warned you guys not to cause trouble. If you dare to say anything more, don't blame me for being merciless and kicking you guys out of Thousand Cranes sect. Killing intent flashed through Yi Tiancheng's eyes. With Dao Lord Lan Yu around, it wasn't appropriate for him to kill the three of them. However, he would have no qualms the moment the three of them were tossed out of Thousand Cranes sect. At that thought, Yi Tiancheng stood up and declared, Senior Lan Yu, the three of them clearly have ill intentions and want to cause trouble. I'm sure no one has any objections to kicking them out of the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Yi Tiancheng could no longer suppress the killing intent in his heart. His reputation had been damaged repeatedly after coming to the Thousand Crane Tea Party and he was already fuming. As long as little fatty and the other two left Thousand Crane sect, he would find an excuse to leave the mystic courtyard momentarily and hunt them down personally. Pretty sister sect master, look. Yi Tiancheng can't wait to make a move on us. I can guarantee that Yi Tiancheng will definitely chase after us the moment we leave this place. Little fatty was smart enough to read Yi Tiancheng's mind. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. She also understood that chasing the three of them out of Thousand Cranes sect was no different from killing them. However, the three of them gave her a headache. At that moment, Yi Tiancheng's gaze was dark as he glared at Leng Ro's back view with resentment. Leng Ro's rejection of the marriage proposal was a huge slap to his face. Yi Tiancheng had never suffered such humiliation. Initially, he only intended to marry Leng Ro and make her his maidservant. But now, Yi Tiancheng has changed his mind. He wanted to marry Leng Ro and torture her ruthlessly, making her suffer so much that she wanted to die and be a slave for life. At that thought, Yi Tiancheng suddenly laughed and declared, Junior sister Leng Ro, don't listen to the rumors. My sincerity towards you can be verified by heaven and earth. Upon hearing that, Dao Lord Lan Yu was extremely pleased and nodded with a smile. Yi Tiancheng continued, I have some ties with Ming Han of Hellfire Hall and he has already promised me that if he manages to refine a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon in this weapon refinement battle, he will give it to me. As for this Khanate Dermic weapon, I'll give it to you in hopes of expressing my sincerity. Of course, this is just a small greeting gift. The crowd was in an uproar. A gift of a Khanate Dermic weapon was a shocking extravagance. Most of the female cultivators present revealed looks of envy. Yi Tiancheng was an unprecedented paragon who was handsome and elegant with unlimited potential in the future to begin with. Now that he was gifting a connate dermic weapon as a greeting gift, who could reject him? Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Yi Tiancheng and nodded in satisfaction before turning to Leng Ro to persuade her. You heard it as well. Yi Tiancheng is a decent child and he's truly sincere towards you. He's even giving away a connate dermic weapon just like that. Fu. Right then, another sneer sounded from the crowd, filled with mockery. Chapter 937, Too Sincere. Chapter 937, Too Sincere. Who was the person laughing? The cultivators were shocked. Dao Lord Lan Yu had just finished speaking and someone actually dared to laugh in such a manner. This was a challenge to the dignity of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord and the master of a sect. All the cultivators turned towards 100 Refinement sect. At that moment, Nangong Ling and the other two were so scared that their hearts were about to jump out. What is little granduncle master doing? Nangong Ling and the other two could naturally tell that the mocking laughter earlier on came from Su Zimo, who was sitting beside them. Little granduncle master, this is a matter of Thousand Crane sect. You're not going to stand out, are you? Ru Xian hurriedly sent a voice transmission to remind Su Zimo. Nangong Ling was also scared out of his wits as he sent a voice transmission, Little granduncle master, don't be rash. Fairy Leng Ro is indeed devastatingly beautiful, but you have to sober up and not be so reckless. All three of them could tell that no one would be able to help Leng Ro if Dao Lord Lan Yu did not relent. Furthermore, there was a top of the phenomenon ranking and number 1 perfected lord watching by the side. Anybody that stood out now would not only be offending the sect master of Thousand Crane sect, but also Yi Tiancheng, who would be able to withstand that? Right then, Dao Lord Lan Yu looked over. Nangong Ling and the other two felt their hearts skip a beat and hurriedly retracted their spirit consciousnesses, not daring to send any more voice transmissions. The three of them looked at Su Zimo nervously and shook their heads repeatedly. Su Zimo had a calm expression and merely smiled at the three of them. However, he had no intention of retreating. Even against Dharma characteristic Dao Lords, he had to step forward. That was because Leng Ro, Little Fatty and the others could no longer withstand the double pressure from a sect master Yi Tiancheng. He was the only one who could shoulder this. What are you laughing at? Dao Lord Lan Yu asked slowly. Behind her calm voice was a volcano that was about to erupt. Against the might of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord, Su Zimo smiled with a composed expression. Everyone knows that even the top weapon refinement masters can't guarantee that they can refine connate dermic weapons. Someone made an empty promise to something that is uncertain. What a good plan. The cultivators gradually came to their senses when they heard that. It was unknown whether Ming Han could refine a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. In other words, the promise that Yi Tiancheng made earlier on was most likely nothing more than a fleeting dream. Little Fatty slapped his forehead and said in realization, Sister Leng Ro, that lad Yi Tiancheng is up to no good. He's way too scheming. If that's the case, I can do it too. Naturally, Little Fatty wanted nothing more than to see the world in chaos. He surveyed his surroundings and declared loudly, it's time for a blind date. Anyone who wants to be my Dao companion will be given a connate dermic treasure as a greeting gift when I discover any grand tombs in the future. Ha 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 ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Little Fatty was even more ridiculous. He had even promised a dermic treasure that only a Mahayana patriarch could use. Furthermore, it was a connate dharma treasure. Yi Tiancheng's gaze was dark. Although he was still smiling, his heart was filled with killing intent. His gaze swept past Su Zimo. Just because of that question, Su Zimo was now someone he had to kill. Sensing the suspicious gazes around him, Yi Tiancheng pretended to be carefree and laughed. Don't worry, Leng Ro. If Ming Han can't refine a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon, I'll definitely find one for you in the future and give it to you. You have my word on that. All right. Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded. I'm relieved that you made that promise. The doubtful gazes and voices gradually faded. Given Yi Tiancheng's reputation, status and position, I believe that he won't go back on his word on a promise like that. Perfected Lord Lan Yu surveyed her surroundings and rested her gaze on Su Zimo for a moment before saying slowly, if anyone has any more doubts, it will just be their pettiness at work. Her tone was heavy and it was clear that she was warning Su Zimo. As though he could not tell, Su Zimo chuckled and asked indifferently, since you want to give a Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon, why wait till the future? Yi Tiancheng, given your reputation, status and position, it can't be possible that you don't even have a single Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon in your possession, right? Everyone was secretly impressed. That statement was no less than a divine weapon, and it was almost as though perfected Lord Lan Yu's words were returned to Yi Tiancheng. Furthermore, it sealed his escape route. Everyone knew that Yi Tiancheng was the number one of the phenomenon ranking and was known as the number one perfected lord. With a behemoth-like Chaos Essence sect backing him, there was no way he did not have a Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon. However, possessing one was one thing, giving it away was another. There were many paragons present. Which of them would be willing to give away a Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon if they had one right now? Yi Tiancheng could no longer pretend as his expression darkened. Su Zimo smiled and asked again, why? You can't bear to? It was a simple question, but Yi Tiancheng felt so terrible that he wanted to vomit blood. He could not answer. If he said he was willing, he would have to take it out right now. If he said that he could not bear to part with it, where would his sincerity be then? That promise earlier would become nothing but a joke as well. Yi Tiancheng stood up slowly and no longer hid the killing intent in his heart. He released a tremendous might and asked coldly, who are you? Everyone could tell that Yi Tiancheng was losing control. In truth, it was not just Yi Tiancheng, even Dao Lord Lan Yu was feeling restless. Right now, she really wanted to chase that green-robed cultivator of 100 Refinement sect out. However, to her dismay, the green-robed cultivator did not do anything out of line the entire time and she could not find a reason for it. Su Zimo ignored Yi Tiancheng's threat and turned to look at Dao Lord Lan Yu. Let's take a step back. Even if he can take out a Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon, what does it prove? Can it prove that he's true towards Ling Ro? Or can it prove that he's honest and has no ulterior motives? Perfected Lord Lan Yu said slowly, at the very least, it can prove Yi Tiancheng's sincerity and prove that he's qualified and worthy of my disciple. Haha. Su Zimo burst into laughter and slapped his storage bag, retrieving a cold, long sword. Buzz. The sword quivered and released 6 bedazzling lights with a domineering sword chi. 6 dermic patterns, a Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon. How rare are Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapons? Su Zimo placed the sword on the tea table beside him casually and said with indifference, I can give this sword to Ling Ro right now. Will it prove my sincerity and prove that I'm qualified? The crowd was in an uproar and everyone was excited, waiting to watch the show. What was going on? Someone was fighting for the marriage with Yi Tiancheng? Furthermore, this action was a merciless slap to Yi Tiancheng's face. The situation was getting more complicated. Even though little Fatty did not know who that green-robed cultivator was, he was grinning from ear to ear as he remarked hurriedly, man, bro. You're way too sincere. Some people haven't even shown a single thing despite their claims the entire time. Unlike you, you're truly straightforward. I'm definitely going to befriend you. Little Fatty gave Su Zimo a thumbs up and did not forget to mock Yi Tiancheng. Yi Tiancheng stood at the side, his face alternating between shades of green and purple as his lungs nearly exploded from anger. Chapter 938, Did you ask me? Chapter 938, Did you ask me? Who is that? How heroic. Could this person be a lover of Fairy Ling Ro and is chasing after her? He's from 100 Refinement sect. Why haven't I seen him before? Most of the cultivators present had never seen Su Zimo before. Even if they had heard of the name Mo Ling, they could not match it to him. While many cultivators were discussing, not many noticed that the cultivators from Sword Sect were glaring at Su Zimo fiercely. Their gazes were sharper than sword chi, as though they wanted to devour him alive. A sword cultivator at the front glared at the long sword beside Su Zimo and gritted his teeth with a menacing expression. The veins on his neck were popping out. That sword cultivator was none other than the third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong. If not for someone pulling him from the side, he would have already rushed over. It turned out that the sword that Su Zimo threw out was the startling dermic sword that he snatched from Jian Wuzong in Wind Cloud City. But now, he was giving it to Leng Ro. Su Zimo was not a sword cultivator to begin with. Furthermore, he had obtained the startling dermic sword casually. He truly did not care to give it away. Little Granduncle Master, you're truly one of a kind. Nan Gongling lamented internally. He clutched his forehead while Lu Hanyan turned her head, not daring to meet the gazes of the Sword Sect cultivators. At that moment, they wanted nothing more than to drag Su Zimo back to the sect. The current situation was chaotic enough. By standing up for Leng Ro, Su Zimo had already offended Dao Lord Lan Yu and Yi Tiancheng. Now, he even offended the Sword Sect as well. Nangong Ling was on the brink of tears and prayed in his heart, "Little Granduncle Master, please hold back. Forget the fact that you snatched his sword, you're even giving away the snatched Khanate dermic weapon now." The mixture of new and old grudges. Nangong Ling could feel that the crowd from Sword Sect were at the end of their limits and wanted to charge over at any moment. Ru Xian remained silent at the side, feeling a little disappointed. If only Little Granduncle Master was as nice to me. Ru Xian chanted internally. Something's not right. Why are the eyes of everyone from Sword Sect red? Why do they look like they've been wronged? That sword looks familiar. Startling dermic sword. Isn't that the startling dermic sword of Jian Wuzong? How did it end up in his hands? Don't you know? The startling dermic sword was snatched away by someone. I heard that it's a nascent soul of 100 Refinement sect called Mo Ling. Ah. It's him. He's the one who made a name for himself in Wind Cloud City and crippled Qingpeng. Before long, an even louder commotion broke out in the crowd. Perfected Lord Pang Lon of Heavenly Dipper sect crossed his arms and looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile. He was the number one of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago. He was older and more mature than most nascent souls present. In his opinion, Mo Ling would die without a burial ground in this situation even before he had to do anything. Many cultivators were making a ruckus and their voices were chaotic. Little Fatty and the others only heard scattered pieces of information about some guy named Mo Ling and a sword cultivator. They were not bothered either. Only Ji Qingtian knew what was going on. However, under the watchful gaze of Dao Lord Lan Yu, he did not dare to use his spirit consciousness to do stealthy acts such as sending a voice transmission. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and a massive pressure descended on the mystic courtyard before the discussions gradually died down. What's your name? Dao Lord Lan Yu turned around and asked Su Zimo in a deep voice. Standing up, Su Zimo smiled and cupped his fists. I'm Mo Ling, a weapon refinement master. Leng Ro and Little Fatty's hearts skipped a beat when they heard that name. Even Shi Jian was momentarily stunned. Initially, Leng Ro knelt on the ground motionlessly. When she heard that name, she turned around for the first time and looked at Su Zimo curiously, sizing him up. Compared to Little Fatty and the others, as a woman, Leng Ro was more meticulous in her thoughts. She could sense that Su Zimo's words earlier on seemed to be implying something. Under normal circumstances, as a disciple of 100 Refinement sect, there was no need for Mo Ling to mention that he was a weapon refinement master. Was this person trying to remind her of something by saying that he was a weapon refinement master? Could it be? Leng Ro thought of a possibility and her heart thumped wildly. She could barely suppress her emotions. Dao Lord Lan Yu smirked in disdain. Oh. Mo Ling, that's an unfamiliar name. Is it on the phenomenon ranking? Why haven't I heard of it before? Although Dao Lord Lan Yu seemed like she was asking, she was implying that Mo Ling was a nobody. It's fine. Su Zimo grinned. You'll remember me after today. Leng Ro is my proudest disciple and is about to be conferred the title of a great talisman master. Dao Lord Lan Yu sneered. Although you're able to give a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon, you're a nobody. Bluntly put, you're not worthy of Leng Ro at all. Huh? Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and asked, so Yi Tiancheng is worthy? Fu. Dao Lord Lan Yu sneered once more. Who is Yi Tiancheng? How can you compare to the top of the phenomenon ranking and the number 1 perfected lord? Frog in the well. What a joke. A cultivator who hasn't even made it onto the phenomenon ranking wants to snatch senior brother Ye's marriage with a mere Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon? This is the light of a firefly trying to compete against the bright moon. Many Chaos Essence sect cultivators laughed. Even though Mo Ling had made a name for himself in Wind Cloud City, his reputation was far inferior compared to Yi Tiancheng. Suddenly, Su Zimo laughed. Number 1 perfected lord? Su Zimo asked indifferently, who gave him that title? Ever since Master entered the nascent soul realm, he has fought countless battles and has never been defeated. There's no doubt that he's the number 1 perfected lord. A maidservant behind Yi Tiancheng stood out and sneered. Oh. Su Zimo smiled. So, it's that simple to be conferred the title of number 1 perfected lord. What a coincidence. Ever since I entered the nascent soul realm, I've fought countless battles and have never been defeated as well. Does that mean that I'm also a number 1 perfected lord? You. The maidservant was speechless. The next moment, Su Zimo looked at Yi Tiancheng and said something that shocked the entire courtyard. Have you asked me before calling yourself the number 1 perfected lord? Pust. The cultivators were moved. That simple statement was filled with a domineering aura that made one shudder. It was absolutely overbearing. They were completely at odds. Nobody expected that someone would dare to challenge Yi Tiancheng head-on even before the second part of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party was held. For a moment, all the cultivators even had a brief notion that Yi Tiancheng was inferior to Mo Ling. Perfected Lord Pang Lan smiled with a playful look in his eyes. Don't go over. Heng Xiuyu sent a voice transmission to Jian Wuzong. This Mo Ling is very strong. Even if you have a sword in your hands, you won't be a match for him. Leng Ro's eyes shone brightly. They were way too similar. In her eyes, Mo Ling seemed to have fused with the person in her memories. Leng Ro believed in it. That was the only person who could possess such an unparalleled aura as well. Chapter 939, Killing with a Sword. Chapter 939, Killing with a Sword. Fellow Daoist, where are you from? Leng Ro looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away, and tried her best to suppress her excitement as she asked softly. North Region. Su Zimo turned around and smiled at Leng Ro. When she heard that, Leng Ro no longer had any doubts. If his name and title as a weapon refinement master and even his background from the North Region were coincidences, there was one thing that could not be a coincidence. The person before them had stood up for them at their most helpless moment and bore all the pressure for them. This was the sort of boldness possessed only by that person. Little Fatty turned to Ji Qingtian excitedly as well. Ji Qingtian nodded subtly. Shi Jian was the only one who did not fully understand. He scratched his head as though he was conflicted about something. Leng Ro smiled. It was a smile that came from the bottom of her heart. Many cultivators were mesmerized by the smile on Leng Ro's face. Leng Ro had an indifferent personality and was cold as ice. Ever since she appeared, she had never spoken to anyone else, let alone revealed such a smile. If Leng Ro was said to be like a cold mountain that was devoid of human emotions, that smile was like a snow lotus blooming on the ice mountain. It was crystal clear and untainted, stunning everyone. To think that fairy Leng Ro would smile at him. Heavens, my goddess! Was Fairy Lang Ro moved instantly by a single Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon? I don't believe it. Fairy Lang Ro must be making use of that person. That person is already on the brink of death and he doesn't even know it. Fufu. Yi Tiancheng looked at the smile on Lang Ro's face with hatred and jealousy in his eyes. The killing intent in his heart had almost reached its peak. I'm going to make that woman suffer a fate worse than death. He howled with a maddened rage internally. Sensing the wrath of Yi Tiancheng, the 9 WYRMS that were sprawled on the ground rose one after another and the steel reins on their bodies rattled. Roar! The 9 WYRMS glared at Su Zimo murderously and let out an earth-shaking roar. Air currents surged and gravel flew. Many cultivators nearby felt the ground quake in a deafening manner and their minds trembled uncontrollably. When the 9 WYRMS were truly enraged, many cultivators realized that the largest WYRM in the middle was a mid-level fiend demon. It was equivalent to a void reversion. A pure-blooded ferocious beast that was a major cultivation realm higher than Yi Tiancheng and was being controlled by it. How terrifying was Yi Tiancheng's true strength? Yi Tiancheng might not even have to do anything. Those 9 beasts alone are enough to sweep through everything. Many cultivators were secretly horrified. Against the threat of the 9 WYRMS, Su Zimo's expression did not change and he sat on the chair in a relaxed manner. He even casually picked up the teacup beside him and lowered his head to drink tea. Without any warning, one of the 9 maids beside Yi Tiancheng suddenly moved. It was Yi Qi who had just killed someone in the mystic courtyard earlier on. Yi Qi's gaze was cold. With a flash, she arrived beside Su Zimo at an extremely fast speed with a murderous intent. Her sleeves shook gently. A dagger appeared and slashed towards Su Zimo's neck. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. Her timing and angle were perfect. Su Zimo was drinking tea and was distracted. Furthermore, it was difficult for him to detect Yi Qi's approach from his angle. This assassination method was not inferior to Hidden Death Sect. The crowd fell into an uproar. Nobody expected that someone would dare to kill another person with 3 Dharma characteristic Dao Lords and 1,000 Crane Sect Master present. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned. Others might not be able to react, but given her cultivation and methods, she could naturally suppress the impending conflict if she wanted to. However, she chose to remain silent. This Mo Ling from 100 Refinement sect who had appeared out of nowhere was truly annoying. Without any reputation, he wanted to become Dao partners with her proudest disciple with a mere Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon? What a joke! He was out of his mind. In this era, Chaos Essence Sect's fortune was heaven-defying and 2 paragons appeared out of nowhere, shocking both past and present. If she could get Lang Ro to become Dao companions with Yi Tiancheng, Dao Lord Lan Yu believed that this would be a perfect outcome for 1,000 Crane Sect. If 1,000 Crane Sect could obtain the protection of Chaos Essence Sect, they would be able to extend their longevity by another 10,000 years at least. Right now, chaos had already broken out in Tianhuang mainland. If the 4 unorthodox groups did not have powerful super sects such as the Immortal and Buddhist sects to protect them, they might be destroyed and replaced. The current situation of 100 Refinement sect was the best example. Dao Lord Lan Yu believed that she had made the right choice, everything she did was for the sect. However, she had never considered Lang Ro's feelings. Lang Ro was her proudest disciple. Everything had to be under her control. She would not allow anything to go wrong. If Yi Qi could cripple Mo Ling cleanly, it would save her a lot of trouble without having to step in personally. Naturally, Mo Ling would be reduced to a joke. Dao Lord Lan Yu was expressionless and pondered for a moment without making any moves. Everything changed instantly within the courtyard. Under countless shocked gazes, Yi Qi had already arrived before Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo was still sitting on the chair with a teacup in his left hand. He was drinking tea with his head lowered, as though he did not notice or react at all. He's finished. Fufu, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. This man doesn't know what's good for him. He deserves to die here. Since Dao Lord Lan Yu hasn't made a move, it's clear that she's tacitly agreeing to this. Yi Qi's eyes shone coldly with a ferocious expression. She knew that Imo Ling was a dead man. Many hundred refinement sect cultivators were shocked and their reactions were a tad slower. Even Dao Being Yuding's expression changed and his pupils constricted. He could only shout, "How dare you!" Even when the dagger was about to make contact with Su Zimo's neck, he did not even raise his head. Instead, he drank his tea and reached out with his right hand, casually pulling out the startling dermic sword beside him. Buzz! The sword quivered and the startling dermic sword shone with a blinding light in Su Zimo's hands. In a flash, it collided with the dagger. Cling! Clang! A series of metallic clashing sounds could be heard. Blood flashed. In her line of sight, Su Zimo waved his hand and slashed. Ripples appeared on the sword and the dagger in her hands was instantly minced into pieces and shot back. Poof! 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 The distance between the two of them was too close. The fragments of the dagger melted into Yi Qi's face and her essence spirit was destroyed on the spot. Yi Qi charged forward swiftly, but her retreat was even swifter. Thump! By the time Yi Qi landed heavily on the ground and rolled to Yi Tiancheng's feet, she was already a mangled corpse with a disfigured face. At that moment, Su Zimo finally finished his tea and raised his head, putting down his teacup slowly. Dao Being Yuding's "How dare you" had just sounded completely. While drinking tea, Su Zimo killed someone with his sword. Everything happened fast but ended even faster. In the blink of an eye, the dust had settled. Yi Qi was dead. Chapter 940, Weapon Refinement Competition. Chapter 940, Weapon Refinement Competition. Not many people saw how Su Zimo attacked. However, in the blink of an eye, Yi Qi was defeated. It was a startling sword strike. What a ruthless man. He killed such a beautiful woman without hesitation. It's normal for sword cultivators to be decisive in killing. However, when did such a powerful sword cultivator appear in 100 Refinement sect? Many cultivators discussed softly. Good sword. Perfected Lord Pang Lan laughed. Jian Wuzong's eyes were bloodshot as he grit his teeth. If not for my startling dermic sword, he wouldn't have been able to kill his opponent with a single slash. Jian Wuzong was not the only one who thought that way. Most of the cultivators present thought that the reason why the attack possessed such shocking might was because of the startling dermic sword that was a Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon. Sword Sex Hang Chuyu narrowed his gaze and frowned in deep thought. He could tell. Even without the startling dermic sword, Yi Qi would not have been able to escape death either. Although the power of that attack was immense, there was something strange about that sword technique. It did not seem like a sword technique and gave him a sense of déjà vu. However, Mo Ling's attack was way too fast and the sword flash was fleeting. There was no chance for him to take a closer look. With the death of Yi Tiancheng's maidservant, everyone realized that something major was about to happen. You have a death wish. Yi Tiancheng stood up slowly, exuding a berserk aura that caused the entire mystic courtyard to tremble. Woo! Before Yi Tiancheng did anything, Yi Yi had already started playing her flute. The sound of the flute was bitter and pervasive, as though it could bore into everyone's consciousness and harm their essence spirits. Kill! Yi Er and Yi San, two maidservants, seemed unaffected by the sound of the flute. Instead, their auras surged and they charged towards Su Zimo. Yi Si waved her sleeves and a shower of pink petals fell. Although the petals looked weak, they seemed to slice the void into pieces when they drifted over. Yi Wu held a feather fan and injected dermic powers. 5 dermic patterns shone on the fan. It was a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Even the maidservants of Yi Tiancheng used perfect dermic weapons. What are you guys doing? Trying to bully with numbers? On 100 Refinement sect side, Dao Being Yuding and Nangong Ling led the group of cultivators. They stood up one after another, took out their dermic weapons and conjured hand seals. The Chaos Essence sect cultivators stood out as well. The battle was about to begin. At this point, the situation was almost out of control. Frowning, Dao Lord Lan Yu had no choice but to step forward and stabilize the situation. If the situation were to develop and both parties were to fight, all the cultivators in the courtyard would be embroiled and no one would be spared. There would be no need for the Thousand Crane Tea Party to continue either. Thousand Crane's sect and Dao Lord Lan Yu would end up as jokes. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu roared and released a tremendous pressure that enveloped down. Not only did her voice contain the power of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord, it also contained a crane cry that instantly destroyed Yi Yi's flute. Yi Si's peach blossoms became motionless in midair. Be it the Primordial Chaos sect or 100 Refinement sect, the dermic arts of the cultivators were dispersed instantly, be it whether they were formed or in the midst of formation. The strength of a Dharma characteristic sect master was evident. This is Thousand Crane sect. Dao Lord Lan Yu said slowly, it's the Thousand Crane Tea Party now. What are you guys trying to do? Do you have any regards for me as a sect master? Yi Yi pointed at Su Zimo and said coldly, this person disregarded Thousand Crane sect's rules and killed someone. He deserves to die. Bullshit. Little Fatty could not hold it in any longer and scolded, young lass, you look fair and clean, but your heart is way too dirty. Are you guys being reasonable? Ru Xian sneered. That woman was the one who attacked first. Why can't we retaliate? Humph, she deserved her death. Let's put this matter aside for now. Dao Lord Lan Yu had a stern expression as she said in a deep voice, settle the feud between you two at the Paragon fight. I won't step in at that time. The situation was finally stabilized with the intervention of Thousand Crane sect's master. The Chaos Essence sect and 100 Refinement sect cultivators retreated. Suddenly, Yi Tiancheng burst into laughter. He looked at the group of 100 Refinement sect cultivators and nodded slowly. Good, very good. 100 Refinement sect sure has guts to dare to challenge Chaos Essence sect now. Foo, ha ha ha. Don't worry, brother Yi. Ming Han shouted, after the weapon refinement competition, 100 Refinement sect will be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. All right. Yi Tiancheng glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, let's see how long more 100 Refinement sect can protect you. Su Zimo smiled calmly. Yi Tiancheng had made a mistake. The reason why Su Zimo dared to confront Yi Tiancheng was not because of 100 Refinement sect but because of himself. Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Leng Ro. Go take part in the talisman battle first. As for your marriage. Pausing for a moment, Dao Lord Lan Yu glanced at Su Zimo and sneered, since someone overestimates himself and wants to challenge Yi Tiancheng, we'll give him a chance when the Paragons fight. If Yi Tiancheng wins, Rower, you'll have to follow my arrangements. How about that? All right. Leng Ro agreed without hesitation. Even Dao Lord Lan Yu was stunned. Leng Ro's reply gave her a feeling that her disciple felt that there was no way Yi Tiancheng would win at all. How was that possible? Perfected Lord Lan Yu smiled and shook her head slightly. In her eyes, the only thing Mo Ling could win against Yi Tiancheng was his cultivation realm. However, for a monster incarnate like Yi Tiancheng, the difference between early and late-stage nascent souls was nothing much. Yi Tiancheng had even killed a void reversion before. Could it be that Mo Ling wanted to rely on the startling dermic sword? That was even more ridiculous. Dao Lord Lan Yu believed that Yi Tiancheng had connate perfected Lord dermic weapons as well. Furthermore, he definitely had more than one. Leng Ro's ready acceptance allowed the Thousand Crane Tea Party to continue on track. For some reason, Dao Lord Lan Yu felt that Leng Ro seemed to have changed into another person just now. Although Leng Ro still had an indifferent expression, there was a hint of joy in her eyes. Dao Lord Lan Yu shook her head and stopped thinking about it. No matter what, the situation was still within her control. The interlude earlier was merely a hiccup. The tea party continued. As a cultivator sent out by Thousand Crane sect, Ling Ro was ready to accept challenges from the various talisman masters of the Middle Continent. The talisman battle progressed even faster. The outcome was decided within an hour. Before the other talisman masters could refine their own talismans, Ling Ro had already refined a 9 Heavens Thunder talisman. The power of that talisman could challenge a peak nascent soul. In fact, even void reversions would have to be wary of it. When the other talisman masters saw that, they gave up and admitted defeat. Naturally, Ling Ro was conferred the title of Great Talisman Master and drank the supreme grade mystic tea. The weapon refinement battle came after the talisman battle. It was also the most important event of the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Chapter 941, Undefeatable Position. Chapter 941, Undefeatable Position. With a confident expression, Ming Han stood in the middle of the mystic courtyard a long time ago and summoned his weapon tripod. With a bang, it landed on the ground. Many cultivators looked over with shocked expressions. The weapon tripod was as tall as a man and its body was tough, shimmering with a dark golden metallic luster. 4 balls of hellfire were carved around the walls of the tripod, as though they would ignite at any moment. Most importantly, there were 6 dermic patterns on the tripod. It was a Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon. This is the Netherworld tripod, my destiny dermic weapon. Ming Han said proudly, back then, I managed to refine a Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon with the help of this tripod. Ah! Ming Han is so powerful. If he can refine another Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon, won't 100 Refinement sect definitely lose? The Hall Master of Hellfire Hall is currently the top weapon refinement Grandmaster of Tianhuang mainland. Now that they have a successor like this kid, Hellfire Hall's rise is almost unstoppable. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. This was the first time many cultivators present had heard of Ming Han and this matter. Sensing the gazes from his surroundings, Ming Han was delighted and turned to look at Lu Hanyan of 100 Refinement sect with a provocative gaze. Lu Hanyan pursed her lips tightly, looking nervous as the pressure on her increased. He's putting pressure on you. Don't fall for it. Su Zimo reminded her softly, it's not that easy to refine a Khanate dermic weapon. There's only a chance of success if the timing, location, luck, environment and many other factors are combined. Although Su Zimo had not refined dermic weapons before, he possessed the foundation of weapon refinement and had knowledge imparted to him by Tao Lord Extreme Fire. He understood the theory behind the craft. Tao Being Yuding added, Junior Sister Lu, relax and try your best. Senior Sister Lu, you can definitely do it. Senior Sister Lu, defeat him. Many cultivators of 100 Refinement sect cheered for Lu Hanyan as well. Lu Hanyan took a deep breath and nodded vigorously. Right then, Ling Ro, who had just been conferred the title of Great Talisman Master, walked over slowly and nodded at Lu Hanyan. Fellow Taoist Lu, I wish you success. Although both of them were at nascent soul realm, Fairy Ling Ro was much more famous than her. Furthermore, they did not know each other. Now that she received Ling Ro's encouragement, Lu Hanyan felt flattered and relaxed. She returned the greeting with a smile. Thank you, Fairy Ling Ro. Ling Ro nodded with her usual aloof expression. When everyone from 100 Refinement sect saw Fairy Ling Ro approaching, they could not help but feel nervous and uneasy. 100 Refinement sect cultivators spent their days refining dermic weapons and were mostly rough men. Many cultivators blushed and did not even dare to look at her. Ling Ro glanced sideways at the green-robed man beside her and smiled. Fellow Taoist Imo Ling, thank you for your help earlier on. If it's convenient, please come over for a chat. Look, Fairy Ling Ro is smiling at Imo Ling again. Fairy Ling Ro seems to be inviting that person. Aya, imagine the two of them standing together. What an ugly sight. It's akin to planting a flower on cow dung. Many cultivators lamented internally. The disciples of 100 Refinement sect were dumbfounded and their jaws almost dropped. All right. Rising, Su Zimo left with Leng Ro. Under the envious gazes of countless cultivators, Leng Ro led Su Zimo, Little Fatty, Ji Qingtian and Shi Jian through the crowd and arrived at the mystic tea tree. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned when she saw that. She truly did not wish to see Leng Ro involved in any manner with Mo Ling from 100 Refinement sect. 100 Refinement sect was already in a precarious situation and might not even be able to get through this. As for Mo Ling, he would definitely die since he challenged Yi Tiancheng. Sect Master, let her be. An elder of Thousand Cranes sect whispered, the Paragon battle is going to begin soon in any case. That Mo Ling won't be able to avoid it. Yes. Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded and ignored Su Zimo and the others. Spirit consciousness detection is blocked beneath this mystic tea tree. Even if we send voice transmissions using our spirit consciousnesses, there's no way of being exposed. Leng Ro's voice sounded in the minds of Su Zimo and the others. Bro, is that really you? Little Fatty could not help himself any longer and was the first to ask. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators around, he would have pounced over and given Su Zimo a bear hug. Su Zimo nodded with a smile and said emotionally, I'm back. Shi Jian was not someone of many words and merely smiled foolishly at the side. He was extremely delighted as well to be reunited with an old friend. I heard about everything that happened to you guys. Su Zimo said, initially, I thought that Di'in would attend this tea party. However, it's a pity that he didn't come. He's lucky to escape this. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo looked at Little Fatty. Don't worry. After this tea party is over, I'll kill Di'in personally and take revenge for you guys. Bro, don't be rash. Little Fatty replied hurriedly, Di'in has already cultivated to the void reversion realm. It won't be too late for you to look for him after you catch up to him. We didn't suffer much either. Furthermore, Yi Tiancheng is extremely strong and not inferior to the old Di'in. Bro, don't underestimate him. Little Fatty was worried and reminded again. Yes. Su Zimo nodded. Zimo, where have you been all these years? Why haven't I heard from you? Leng Ro looked at Su Zimo curiously and asked with concern. Su Zimo recalled the days in Thousand Demon Valley where he reigned supreme with Monkey and the others and could not help but smile. After leaving the ancient battlefield, I went to Thousand Demon Valley. Su Zimo recounted his experience in Thousand Demon Valley. They naturally had a lot to say after reuniting after such a long time. Unknowingly, time passed. The fight for weapon refinement in the middle of the courtyard had already reached its climax. Including Ming Han, there were hundreds of weapon refinement masters from all over the Middle Continent that challenged Lu Hanyan. At that moment, other than Ming Han and Lu Hanyan, the other weapon refinement masters had already withdrawn from the fight. That was because Ming Han and Lu Hanyan's weapon refinement speed far surpassed everyone else's and they were already at the final step of forming their dermic patterns. Both parties refined flying swords. Furthermore, Ming Han was one step ahead of Lu Hanyan. Condensing dermic patterns was similar to condensing spirit patterns. It was the most difficult step and the slightest mistake would cause all their efforts to go to waste. At that moment, Ming Han's weapon tripod shone with a fifth beam of light under countless gazes. This meant that Ming Han had already formed 5 dermic patterns. This is way too scary. If Ming Han stops now, he would have already successfully refined a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Many cultivators discussed softly. However, Ming Han showed no signs of stopping. He was blessed with luck and was a rare weapon refinement genius throughout history. He wanted to defy the heavens and condense his 6th dermic pattern to refine a connate dermic weapon in front of everyone. Once the connate dermic weapon was successfully refined, he would be in an undefeatable position. Everything that happened today would be recorded in the history of weapon refinement forever. Chapter 942, Public Enemy. Chapter 942, Public Enemy. The entire mystic courtyard fell into silence. Almost all the cultivators were watching the two people in the middle of the crowd who were in the midst of a weapon refinement competition intently. This was the most critical juncture for the both of them. Ming Han was attempting to condense his 6th dermic pattern. Lu Hanyan was condensing her 5th dermic pattern. No one gave up. Nobody knew the outcome of this weapon refinement battle until the final moment. After all, the success rate of condensing 6 dermic patterns to create connate dermic weapons was extremely low. If Ming Han failed, Lu Hanyan would naturally win. However, Ming Han still had the upper hand in the current situation. He was the first to form 5 dermic patterns, and the pressure Lu Hanyan was under would definitely increase. Many disciples of 100 Refinement sect were nervous as they clenched their fists and prayed for Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan's face was already slightly pale. Weapon refinement was extremely mentally draining. Furthermore, she was under such immense pressure. Ming Han closed his eyes and sensed the flying sword within the weapon tripod with his spirit consciousness. It rose and fell within a ball of hellfire, and the blade of the sword was burned red with 5 distinct patterns. Ming Han's expression was no longer as relaxed as before, looking slightly grim. He did not have the confidence to condense 6 dermic patterns either. He could only rely on that bit of experience from the past, his keen senses towards weapon refinement that were obtained after many years of effort towards the craft, as well as his immense fortune to grasp that fleeting opportunity. Whoosh! Right then, Lu Hanyan's weapon tripod shone with a bedazzling light. The crowd of cultivators turned and gasped. A 5th dermic pattern. Lu Hanyan had also condensed a 5th dermic pattern. If she stopped now, a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon would be forged successfully. For weapon refinement masters, being able to create perfect dermic weapons was already their limit. Normally, Lu Hanyan would be able to win against weapon refinement masters from all over the Middle Continent with this perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. However, she could not defeat Ming Han. Ming Han's weapon refinement speed was even faster than hers. Furthermore, Ming Han was currently cultivating his 6th dermic pattern. Lu Hanyan took a deep breath and tried her best to control the flames to calm her mind. She was in no hurry to condense the 6th dermic pattern. She was waiting. If Ming Han were to fail, she would be able to win this weapon refinement battle with that perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Ming Han's eyes were still closed, as though he was immersed in his own world. Lu Hanyan's actions did not affect him at all. Everyone held their breaths and did not dare to blink. The fight for weapon refinement was at its most critical moment, and victory could be decided at any moment. An unknown period of time passed. Ming Han suddenly opened his eyes and hollered, "Condense." Instantly, the heaven and earth powers in the void seemed to be boiling. An endless stream of heaven and earth powers surged into the netherworld tripod and almost materialized into a gigantic vortex. Dermic powers spewed from the netherworld tripod and a bright light burst forth. A 6th dermic pattern appeared on the sword. The connate perfected Lord dermic weapon was successfully done. The cultivators were moved. Everyone widened their eyes and looked on in disbelief. It was too shocking. A scarlet flying sword appeared from the netherworld tripod slowly. There were 6 distinct patterns on the sword that shone with a blinding light. Most cultivators would not be able to witness such a sight even once in their entire lives. Nobody wanted to miss it. All right. Even Thousand Crane sect master, Dao Lord Lanyu, could not help but praise. While everyone from 100 Refinement sect was shocked, their expressions darkened. Lu Hanyan was shocked and failed to control her flames. The flying sword in her tripod nearly exploded to waste all her prior efforts. She took a deep breath and hurriedly stabilized the flames. The birth of the connate perfected Lord dermic weapon meant that she had no way out. She could only take the challenge head-on and continue cultivating her 6th dermic pattern. The tides had turned entirely. Instantly, it was as though all the pressure was mounted on the body of this frail woman. In fact, she felt as though she could barely breathe. Ming Han stood proudly as he received the admiring gazes from the crowd and the praises of countless people. He looked down at Lu Hanyan from the corner of his eyes. His gaze was filled with indescribable disdain. Lu Hanyan did not dare to make eye contact with Ming Han. She could only try her best to compose herself and attempt to condense her sixth dermic pattern. Time slowly passed. Lu Hanyan's face turned paler and beads of sweat formed on her forehead. She did not dare to attempt condensation. If she failed in her attempt, she would fall into an endless abyss. However, if she did not attempt to condense it, her chances would decrease until she exhausted her mental strength. The external pressure and mental fatigue made Lu Hanyan feel like she was about to break down. Ming Han smirked when he saw that. He knew that he would definitely win. Su Zimo and the others were also watching the situation under the mystic tea tree. That beautiful sister is probably going to lose, little fatty sighed. Leng Ro turned to look at Su Zimo and said, if she loses, it will greatly affect the reputation of 100 Refinement sect. I'm afraid. The first segment of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party was to select great masters of the 4 unorthodox groups. The titles of Great Formation Master, Great Elixir Refinement Master and Great Talisman Master were all obtained by cultivators of Ancient Array Sect, Elixir Yang Sect and 1,000 Crane Sect. However, if the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators did not manage to get their hands on the title of Great Weapon Refinement Master, Hellfire Hall would definitely make use of the opportunity to strike. Su Zimo frowned deeply in deep thought. If he resorted to force before the Paragon battle segment, there was a high chance that he would be ousted from this place by Dao Lord Lan Yu. However, he would not be of much help if he did not resort to force. Rubbing his forehead gently, Su Zimo pondered for a moment and his eyes flickered. Condense. Right then, Lu Hanyan finally made a move to condense her sixth dermic pattern. However, the moment she said that, a faint cracking sound came from the weapon tripod. Although it was a soft sound, it was like thunder in Lu Hanyan's ears. Ming Han's smile deepened. He had already won. It was the sound of the sword's blade cracking from a failed dermic pattern condensation attempt. Right after, a loud bang sounded from the weapon tripod as the sword exploded into countless shards that struck the walls of the tripod. Lu Hanyan's mind was affected and her body swayed as she fell from midair. Her face was pale as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Hanyan. Nangong Ling hurried forward and supported Lu Hanyan with a heartbroken expression. I've lost. Lu Hanyan murmured softly with a miserable expression, her eyes filled with pain. Ming Han's eyes were cold as he shouted, if your 100 Refinement sect can't even defend the title of a Great Weapon Refinement Master, what rights do you have to be one of the 4 unorthodox groups? That's right. Perfected Lord Pang Lon of Heavenly Dipper sect stood up and declared, 100 Refinement sect's decline is now a cold fact. In my opinion, you guys should have been eliminated from the 4 unorthodox groups a long time ago. Jian Wuzong added coldly, I agree. The reason why he stood out was purely due to his anger towards Su Zimo, who was from 100 Refinement sect. Yi Tiancheng said indifferently, how dare you guys from 100 Refinement sect stay here? Get lost, you disgraceful scum. His intentions were simple. Once he chased everyone from 100 Refinement sect out of 1,000 Crane sect, he could send the 9 WYRMS by his feet to kill everyone from 100 Refinement sect. Of the 6 major immortal sects that were participating in the Tea Party, 3 of them expressed their stand on the side of Hellfire Palace. The other 3 immortal sects remained silent and watched coldly by the sidelines. It was clear they had no intention of helping. The 100 Refinement sect cultivators were at a loss. It was as though 100 Refinement sect had turned into a public enemy that everyone wanted to step on. Chapter 943, I'd like to try. Chapter 943, I'd like to try. Heavenly Dipper sect, Chaos Essence sect and Sword sect expressed their stance. The other 3 immortal sects watched coldly from the sidelines. The Void Reversion monks of the 3 major Buddhist monasteries, Hollow, Formless and Wisdom, that came to attend the Tea Party lowered their heads. It was clear that they did not want to get involved in this matter. Most of the time, the Buddhist sects were aloof from worldly affairs and rarely participated in fights between sections. If they can't even fight for the title of the Great Weapon Refinement Master, 100 Refinement sect is truly unworthy of their reputation as one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Actually, there's nothing wrong with letting Hellfire Hall replace 100 Refinement sect. In the cultivation world, strength is everything. That's normal. Many cultivators discussed softly. Dao Bing Yuding stood up slowly with a grim expression and shouted, trying to take over 100 Refinement sect's position just because of a weapon refinement competition? What a joke. Everyone has the rights except you guys from Hellfire Hall. How dare a traitor of 100 Refinement sect try to reign supreme? Ridiculous. Ha ha ha. Ming Han reared his head in laughter and said, I think you're the one who's truly laughable. 100 Refinement sect is old and decayed. If you don't think about advancing, you'll only exist in name. Master could not bear to see the decline of the Tao of weapon refinement, and that's why he decided to establish his own sect. Yet, he managed to achieve this within a few thousand years. Who would dare to claim that he's unqualified? As the saying goes, there's no order in understanding the Tao, and those who are skilled are the masters. Among the 5 heretical doctrines, the sect master of corpse refinement cult was once a disciple of puppet sect. Right now, isn't that senior still creating a world-shaking achievement that's on par with puppet sect? Master is extremely talented and created his own Tao of refining weapons using hellfire. With his current achievements, he has already surpassed everyone in 100 Refinement sect. Who dares to say that he's not qualified? Ming Han had a haughty expression and his sleeves fluttered in high spirits. His words were forceful and many of the surrounding cultivators nodded silently in agreement. He had just won the weapon refinement competition and was young and impetuous. When he said those words, his aura was torrential. Although Dao Bing Yuding's cultivation realm was high, he paled in comparison. Even the people of 100 Refinement sect harbored doubts in their minds. Could the sect have truly fallen to such an irreversible state? Nangong Ling hugged Lu Hanyan and glared at the dazzling Ming Han not far away, his eyes filled with grief and indignation. Dao Bing Yuding looked towards the 3 unorthodox groups. No matter what, since time immemorial, the 4 unorthodox groups were on the same side. If 100 Refinement sect was in trouble, the other 3 unorthodox groups would not sit idly by. Dao Lord Lan Yu swept her gaze across the faces of Chaos Essence sect, Heavenly Dipper sect and Sword sect and sighed internally without saying anything. It was clear that Hellfire Hall came prepared for today's matter. With the support of the 3 immortal sects, it was useless even if Thousand Crane sect stood out. They might even offend the 3 immortal sects, the gains would not make up for the losses. Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect could not take it lying down and declared, fellow Taoist Ming Han, you're wrong. 100 Refinement sect has a long history and a strong foundation. They are not as depraved as the way you make them out to be. Furthermore, the positions of the 4 unorthodox groups are not to be underestimated. How can their statuses be decided through the mere outcome between 2 great weapon refinement masters? Foo-foo. Ming Han chuckled once more and declared, among the grandmasters, 100 Refinement sect is even less of a match. Since all the major sects are present today, let me ask 100 Refinement sect this. If my master were to come forth, which of you in 100 Refinement sect can beat him in weapon refinement? The 100 Refinement sect cultivators were at a loss. Dao Bing Yuding did not say anything either. Prior to this, the weapon refinement grandmaster of 100 Refinement sect had fought with the hall master of Hellfire Hall and suffered a crushing defeat. The reason why the Thousand Crane Tea Party was so important was because 100 Refinement sect wanted to make use of this opportunity to get back at them. To think that it would end in a crushing defeat. Although Ming Han was a nascent soul, at that moment, he was already in the limelight. Pointing in the direction of 100 Refinement sect, he hollered. You guys can win in the battle for the title of a great master. You guys don't dare to accept the challenge for a battle between grandmasters. 100 Refinement sect, what rights do you have to remain as one of the 4 unorthodox groups? His voice boomed like thunder in the ears of the 100 Refinement sect cultivators. 100 Refinement sect is finished. That's right. Even if 100 Refinement sect refuses to admit it, I'm afraid there won't be a place for 100 Refinement sect among the unorthodox groups after today. To think that a super sect that has been passed down through history would fall just like that. Many cultivators discussed without any reservations, no longer considering the feelings of 100 Refinement sect. Tiancheng laughed coldly with a mocking look in his eyes. If I was a disciple of 100 Refinement sect, I would have long scrammed back to the sect. How can I still have the cheek to stay here? Finally, 100 Refinement sect cultivator could not withstand the pressure and stood up silently. Before long, a second 100 Refinement sect disciple stood up and left with his head lowered. When Dao Bing Yuding saw that, he extended his arm and moved his lips, as though he wanted to ask them to stay but could not manage to say anything. Yi Tiancheng's gaze was cold as his spirit consciousness released a fluctuation. He was already prepared for the WIRMS beneath his feet to head outside Thousand Cranes sect and kill everyone from 100 Refinement sect. Are you guys not leaving because you want to challenge me? Ming Han looked at Dao Bing Yuding, Nangong Ling and the others with mockery in his eyes as he said with a smile, "Oh, I almost forgot. 100 Refinement sect has a long history and a strong foundation. There might be hidden dragons and crouching tigers, who knows? Anyone who is unconvinced can challenge me. If any of you can refine a Kane perfected Lord Dermic weapon, I'll consider it my loss. How about that?" The cultivators of Hellfire Hall burst into laughter. "I'd like to try." Just as Dao Bing Yuding could not take it and was about to leave with the group of cultivators with an embarrassed expression, a voice sounded from the crowd. The cultivators were stunned and turned to look. A green-robed man walked through the crowd with a calm expression. It was Su Zimo. "It's you?" Ming Han's gaze turned cold. Yi Tiancheng glared at Su Zimo with undisguised killing intent. This person had spoiled his plans time and time again, to think that he would appear now. Yi Tiancheng could not wait to strike and kill this person right now. "Little Granduncle Master, you." Nangong Ling and the other two looked at Su Zimo with bright eyes. Could it be that Little Granduncle Master was not only a sword cultivator with shocking combat strength, but also an outstanding weapon refinement master? Could Little Granduncle Master really save 100 Refinement sect this time round? The three of them had never seen Su Zimo refine weapons before. Therefore, when Su Zimo stood out, endless anticipation filled their hearts. Dao Bing Yuding's heart skipped a beat as well and his eyes lit up. At that moment, he suddenly understood why the sect master and Dao Lord Scarlet Star had instructed him to obey the orders of this Little Granduncle Master at the critical juncture before they left the sect. So, this Little Granduncle Master was the hidden trump card of 100 Refinement sect. Nangong Ling, Yuding, and the other two looked at Su Zimo expectantly. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Nangong Ling and the other two. Clearing his throat, he asked, "Does anyone have a weapon tripod? Can I borrow it?" Nangong Ling. Ru Xian. Dao Bing Yuding nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. True weapon refinement masters viewed weapon tripods as their most important dermic weapons and carried them around everywhere. How could they not have weapon tripods? However, Su Zimo could not be blamed for this as well. He had a weapon tripod that could refine spirit weapons but not one that could refine dermic weapons. As for the bronze square tripod, it had already been refined into a destiny dermic weapon by his scarlet-haired Een spirit and was surrounded by demonic chi, making it inconvenient for him to reveal it. Chapter 944, Deceiving Everyone. Chapter 944, Deceiving Everyone. Is Mo Ling here to embarrass himself? You don't even have a weapon tripod and you want to fight against Ming Han? Don't say that. Perhaps he's truly a hidden expert who has long cultivated to the point where the tripod exists in his soul and he does not require it physically. Ha 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 ha. The cultivators burst into laughter with sarcastic remarks. Ru Xian rolled her eyes and sighed internally. Little Granduncle Master, why are you still causing trouble at a time like this? Sigh. Su Zimo was not bothered by the laughter around him and was calm. To be fair, he did not have much confidence in stepping forward this time round. Furthermore, if he were to rely on his true level in dermic weapon refinement, not to mention Ming Han and Lu Han Yen, anyone from 100 Refinement sect would be able to surpass him. Unlike the others, Lu Han Yen did not smile. From the first time she saw Su Zimo, she could sense that this person seemed to be shrouded by a mysterious aura with many secrets. Lying in Nangong Ling's embrace, she whispered, "Senior brother, lend your weapon tripod to Granduncle Master." Her weapon tripod was of the highest grade. However, due to the explosion of the flying sword earlier on, her weapon tripod was damaged as well and she had to repair it before it could be used for weapon refinement again. Nangong Ling was stunned and replied instinctively, "My weapon tripod is not of a high grade and is only a superior grade perfected Lord dermic weapon." Weapon tripods were naturally crucial to creating connate dermic weapons. The reason why Ming Han could succeed was because of his netherworld tripod. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo waved it off. "It's fine. Just lend me yours." Fufu. Ming Han was relieved when he heard that. The moment Su Zimo stood out, he was truly unsure. Previously, he had come into contact with Su Zimo and did not know the latter's capabilities. However, when he saw that Su Zimo was going to use a superior grade weapon tripod, he knew that this man would definitely lose. "How dare you challenge me when you don't even know the basics of weapon refinement?" Ming Han shook his head and sneered. When Nangong Ling saw that Su Zimo was serious and did not seem like he was joking, he could only grit his teeth and send his weapon tripod over. Su Zimo received it and knocked on it, sizing it up. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Mo Ling, are you serious? This is a weapon refinement battle. If you're trying to cause trouble, don't blame me for chasing you out." "Of course I'm being serious." Su Zimo nodded. "Senior, please set up your spirit consciousness barrier." The process of weapon refinement would be carried out in the weapon tripod. However, many of the techniques and secret skills used for spirit gathering were extremely secretive. In order to prevent outsiders from using their spirit consciousness to probe, they would set up barriers outside. Dao Lord Lan Yu harumphed coldly and her glabella shone as a barrier was set up. The barrier could block one's spirit consciousness, but it could not block one's vision. That was normal. If vision was blocked, it would be meaningless to watch the weapon refinement process. "Senior brother Nangong, I still have a small piece of meteorite left." Handed over to Granduncle Master, Lu Han Yen took out a small stone from her storage bag and handed it over. The first step of creating weapons was material selection. In order to refine connate dermic weapons, materials were even more important. Su Zimo waved it off. "There's no need. I've prepared a material for myself." With that said, he flipped his palm. Everyone focused their gazes and saw a milky white cobblestone lying quietly in Su Zimo's palm. "What material is that?" "I don't know. I've never seen it before." "What can he refine with that gigantic material?" "After tempering and removing the impurities, he should be able to refine an embroidery needle, right?" Everyone from Hellfire Hall burst into laughter. Ming Han frowned. He did not recognize the material either. However, he was not bothered. The flames of a nascent soul could not smelt materials that were truly heavenly defying. In reality, even the 3 Dharma characteristic Tao lords present did not recognize the cobblestone, let alone Ming Han and the others. Su Zimo looked at the expressions of the crowd and was silent. There were few cultivators in Tianhuang mainland that could recognize the origin of this stone, let alone the people in the mystic courtyard. That stone was the illumination stone that was hidden in Su Zimo's right eye. The illumination stone was obtained by Tao Lord Extreme Fire in a primordial ruin. However, he did not know the origin of the stone. As for the red-headed ghost at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, he merely mentioned a few possibilities and was unsure. No matter what, the illumination stone was very strong. The secret skill of the dragon race's illumination dragon eye was comprehended through the illumination stone. The illumination sword formation was also comprehended through the illumination stone. The stone had been hidden in Su Zimo's right eye for the past few years without any activity. However, perhaps because he was cultivating the illumination dragon eye, a month ago, he sensed that he had formed a connection with the illumination stone. The illumination stone seemed to have become a part of his body and could change according to his wishes. Of course, that did not have much of an impact on Su Zimo and would not change anything either. It was only earlier on that he thought of a possibility under the mystic tea tree. Perhaps, he could split the illumination stone into equal parts to refine them in the form of flying swords. That way, he would be able to form a set of flying swords easily. A flying sword as such might not be considered as a dermic weapon. However, its core was the illumination stone that contained countless secrets. It was indestructible and definitely not weaker than dermic weapons. There were many mystical treasures and natural oddities in the world. Even without any dermic patterns, they were extremely powerful and unshakable. For example, there were the 7 unique treasures. There was Monkey's Imminent. There was the Creation Green Lotus. There was the Soraka Flower. The Illumination Stone was one of them as well. Su Zimo's plan was simple. He wanted to make use of the Illumination Stone and the secretiveness of the weapon refinement process to deceive everyone right before their very eyes. The reason why he did not appear despite the aggressive actions of many sects earlier on was because he was contemplating the feasibility of this plan under the tea tree. He only stood out after he deduced the entire process once through. Of course, there were many uncertainties regarding this plan. Even Su Zimo himself was not confident that it would work. He tried his best to compose himself as he rose slowly. Waving his sleeves, he swept up the weapon tripod on the ground and made it hover in front of him. Thereafter, he placed the illumination stone into the weapon tripod. Swoosh! Su Zimo conjured a dermic art and a scarlet flame appeared in his palm. It was the immortal Dao fire. He placed it under the weapon tripod and started smelting it continuously. The process looked legitimate. In reality, Su Zimo was merely putting on an act. An hour passed and the immortal Dao fire almost burned through the weapon tripod, but there was still no reaction from the illumination stone. In fact, Su Zimo was relieved when he saw that. At the very least, it proved that the illumination stone was indestructible. Typically speaking, forging process would begin after the smelting and material selection process. If he wanted to deceive everyone present, the forging process would be the most important. Chapter 945, Success. Chapter 945, Success. Chi. Ming Han laughed coldly. Although Su Zimo did not make any major mistakes in his weapon refinement steps, in the eyes of an experienced great weapon refinement master like Ming Han, he looked extremely amateurish in his actions. Ming Han stood by the side with his arms crossed. He was in no hurry at all, waiting to see Su Zimo make a fool of himself. According to his predictions, Su Zimo would only be able to create 3 dermic patterns at most. If his luck was bad, he might not even be able to condense a single dermic pattern. Su Zimo continued his weapon refinement as though no one was around. Under normal circumstances, at the forging step, the spirit materials within should have already melted into a molten form, burning scarlet like lava. However, the illumination stone in Su Zimo's weapon tripod was still the same. Only, under the control of Su Zimo's spirit consciousness, the illumination stone gradually separated into 36 stones that were the size of a water droplet. In his mind, one of the water droplets gradually transformed into the shape of a thin, exquisite flying sword. Thereafter, Su Zimo's lips curled and a smile appeared in his eyes. With a thought of his spirit consciousness, a pattern appeared on the body of the flying sword, looking like a dermic pattern. His spirit consciousness moved and another pattern appeared on the sword. Those patterns were not condensed on the sword with dermic powers but etched onto the sword's body. Although it was a fake dermic pattern, it looked no different from the real one. Swoosh! swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, 6 patterns appeared on the sword. If Zimo wanted to, he could even create 7 or 8 dermic patterns, let alone 6, everything could be decided with a single thought. Of course, if he created 7 or 8 patterns, he would be exposed instantly. Typically speaking, the process of forging required a relatively short period of time unless it was an extremely complicated form. However, it was different for Zimo. He had spent an extremely long time in the forging step. Not only did he have to create a total of 36 flying swords, he also had to ensure that there was no deviation in the size, shape and location of the patterns on the 36 flying swords. That was an extremely draining task. Even the forging of a flying sword takes so long. Seems like this person isn't that capable. Fufu, now I'm even looking forward to see what sort of spectacular feat he is going to produce in the tempering and spirit gathering step. Many cultivators could not see through the weapon tripod with their eyes and their spirit consciousnesses were isolated, so they naturally did not know what was happening inside. If anyone could see the situation inside the weapon tripod, their eyeballs would pop out of their sockets. After a long time, Zimo finally completed his forging step. The most interesting part of the entire weapon refinement process was tempering and spirit gathering. Many cultivators became impatient a long time ago when the forging step took close to 2 hours to complete. Next was tempering. 100 Refinement sect had a specialized secret tempering technique, 1000 tempered finger. Back then, Tao Lord Extreme Fire merely imparted a little bit of knowledge to him. It was only 3 months ago that he imparted all the profoundness of the 1000 tempered finger. This was Zimo's first time executing this secret skill. Naturally, the tempering process looked incomparably amateurish. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect either lowered their heads or glanced sideways, embarrassed to watch. His tempering method was way too crude. Zimo did not mind at all. He pretended to temper for a long time before beginning on spirit gathering. Many cultivators perked up and waited to watch the show. It was easy for all sorts of trouble to occur during the spirit gathering stage. If the spirit gathering step failed and the weapon refinement master's weapon that was being refined exploded, it would take a huge toll on the weapon refinement master's mental state. Coupled with the unexpected change of events that might lead to a reverse flow of qi into their hearts, many of them would faint on the spot. Many of them would be severely injured as well. That was the same thing that happened to Lu Hanyan. Ru Xian prayed silently, the explosion of the flying sword is inevitable. I only hope that the heavens will bless little granduncle master so that he will be fine. Whoosh. Before long, a beam of light shone from the weapon tripod. Everyone was stunned. A dermic pattern was formed. Ming Han's expression was calm. It was normal for a dermic pattern to be condensed, there was nothing to be alarmed about. Not long after, a second light flashed. This meant that 2 dermic patterns were already formed. No one could see what was happening within the weapon tripod. In reality, it was silent within the weapon tripod and Zimo was not condensing any dermic patterns. Given his nascent soul realm cultivation, it was extremely easy for him to create some light tricks from within the weapon tripod. Tao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. She felt that something was amiss. However, although she was the master of a sect, she could not use her spirit consciousness to check on the situation inside while others were refining weapons. That would be a taboo for weapon refinement masters. In reality, if there was a seasoned weapon refinement grandmaster present, Zimo's tricks wouldn't have been able to deceive the former's rich experience. Unfortunately, there were no weapon refinement grandmasters at the 1000 Crane Tea Party. Whoosh. Before long, a third light flashed. This time round, even Ming Han exclaimed softly. Of course, he was not nervous. The further one progressed in spirit gathering, the more difficult it would be and the lower the chances of success. At least half of the weapon refinement masters present could condense 3 dermic patterns. While he was pondering, a fourth light flashed. 4 dermic patterns. This time round, even the crowd was stirred. Many cultivators were no longer looking down on him. No matter what, any weapon refinement master that could refine a supreme-grade dermic weapon with 4 dermic patterns would be considered skillful. A moment later, a 5th light burst forth. This time round, the crowd was in an uproar. Even the people of 100 Refinement sect widened their eyes in disbelief. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were dumbfounded. They could not believe that their little granduncle master, who did not have a weapon tripod of his own and possessed amateurish weapon refinement techniques, could create a perfect-grade perfected Lord dermic weapon using a battered weapon tripod. Ming Han frowned deeply. He could sense that something was amiss as well, but he could not pinpoint the exact reason. Furthermore, he could already feel the pressure. Could this Mo Ling really create a Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon? Ming Han narrowed his gaze at Su Zimo and pondered. An unknown period of time passed. Whoosh! A bedazzling light burst forth from the weapon tripod once more as dermic powers surged and filled the void. Ah! A series of exclamations broke out from the crowd. The 6th dermic pattern lit up and the crowd was shocked. That's impossible. Ming Han's expression darkened as he grit his teeth. There's no way it's that easy creating 6 dermic patterns. I refuse to believe it. Ming Han was not the only one who did not believe it. Most of the cultivators present, including those of 100 Refinement sect, could not believe it and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Without giving the crowd much time to react, Su Zimo poured the cold water he prepared into the weapon tripod. Shing! Green smoke billowed. The quenching was complete. In reality, quenching was done by placing a flying sword that was burned scarlet into cold water. However, nothing happened to the illumination stone despite it being burned by the immortal Dao fire. If he were to take out the flying sword, he would be exposed right away. Since the weapon tripod was burning hot, sizzling sounds would definitely be produced when cold water was poured within. When the cultivators present saw that, they merely thought that this man's quenching technique was indeed unique and did not think too much about it. Success. Finally, it was time to see the truth. Looking at the flustered Ming Han not far away, Su Zimo smiled gently. If no one noticed anything amiss by this point, Ming Han would be the next to suffer. Chapter 946, Mass Production. Chapter 946, Mass Production. Where's your flying sword? Show it to us. Ming Han shouted with widened eyes. Don't be hasty. With a calm expression, Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before controlling one of the flying swords to rise slowly from the weapon tripod. If nobody could see the issue with this flying sword, it would mean that everything would be fine. If anyone could tell that something was amiss, it would be a joke even if he brought out all 36 flying swords. Right in front of everyone, a tiny and exquisite flying sword appeared. It was milky white and looked like a thin silver needle. What's this? How can that be called a flying sword? Ha ha ha, this is clearly an embroidery needle. Did Mo Ling create an embroidery needle so that he can become a seamstress? The cultivators of Hellfire Hall mocked. However, most of the cultivators present did not laugh. That was because most of the people present were nascent soul paragons. As long as they focused their gazes, they would be able to tell that although the dermic weapon was small and exquisite, it was indeed in the form of a flying sword. Furthermore, there were 6 faint patterns on the sword. Although the dermic weapon was small, it was indeed a Khanate dermic weapon with 6 dermic patterns. What do we do now? Both of them have refined Khanate dermic weapons and can be given the title of Great Weapon Refinement Masters. However, there's no clear victor between the two of them and these 2 major sections. Furthermore, Mo Ling seemed to have taken a shorter time than Ming Han to refine that weapon. Many cultivators discussed. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect looked excited. They had not expected things to turn out this way. An unexpected change of event seemed to have opened up a path of hope for them. Ming Han frowned. He felt that something was amiss, but he could not figure it out right away. When he heard the discussions around him, he felt frustrated and his mind was even more confused. Even connate dermic weapons have differences in strength. Ming Han laughed coldly. How can your embroidery needle be compared to my flying sword? We'll know once we compare. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and controlled the tiny and exquisite flying sword to stab towards Ming Han. In the void, a cold glint flashed and the flying sword was already close. Ming Han was shocked. Without thinking, he summoned the flying sword that he had just refined and slashed at the incoming flying sword. Clang! Ming Han shuddered. His flying sword was repelled by the tiny flying sword and the glow on it dimmed significantly. The cultivators were moved. It could be said that Ming Han's flying sword was merely repelled because his dermic powers were inferior to Su Zimo. However, the fact that the glow of Ming Han's flying sword dimmed proved that its blade was inferior to the tiny flying sword Su Zimo refined. Su Zimo's flying sword hovered in midair and shone with a milky white glow, as though it could absorb the energy of the scorching sun. It grew brighter by the moment. The essence of the flying sword was the illumination stone. Even a connate dermic weapon might not be able to challenge it. When Su Zimo cultivated his illumination eye daily, it was by relying on the blazing sun. The blazing sun and illumination stone had a mysterious connection to one another to begin with, so it was no surprise that something like this would happen. However, to many cultivators, it was extremely shocking. Although this flying sword is small, it can attract the light of the blazing sun. It's truly an eye-opener. Seems like Hellfire Hall lost the weapon refinement battle. The expressions of the cultivators of Heavenly Dipper sect, Chaos Essence sect and Sword sect darkened gradually. If Hellfire Hall lost, they would have no reason to attack 100 Refinement sect. It did not matter what would happen in the future. At the very least, 100 Refinement sect's crisis at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party would be resolved. Since they're both connate perfected Lord dermic weapons, I think we should just consider this a draw. Right then, perfected Lord Pang Lon of Heavenly Dipper sect said indifferently. Why is it a draw? That's right, Ming Han's flying sword is clearly not a match. That's right. We're even just using an ordinary weapon tripod. There was no way the 100 Refinement sect cultivators would be willing to let things go just like that given their pent-up frustrations. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu stood out at the right time and said indifferently, this weapon refinement competition is truly an eye-opener. Since both cultivators managed to refine connate dermic weapons, it should be a draw. As for the difference in strength between the connate dermic weapons, it's only natural for there to be a difference since they are being used by different cultivators. Both of you will be great weapon refinement masters and you can share a cup of supreme grade mystic tea together. This will be the end of the issue. There's no need for further arguments. Dao Lord Lan Yu was clearly biased. The 100 Refinement sect cultivators were indignant. Dao Bing Yuding shook his head and gestured for everyone to quiet down. 1,000 Cranes sect was the host of this tea party and since those were the words of a sect master, there was no point contesting further. Jian Wuzong shouted, that's right. Hurry up and proceed to the next segment. It's time to settle some grudges. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, countless murderous and hostile gazes landed on Su Zimo. Countless people wanted to kill Su Zimo at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. All right. Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded. Since that's the case, I'll invite the two of you to drink this tea and rest for a while. After that, we'll proceed to the second segment of the tea party, the fight between the paragons. Is he even fit to share a cup of tea with me? Just as everyone thought that this matter was over, Su Zimo opened his mouth slowly and sneered. Do you have any objections? Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze turned grim. Su Zimo's repeated provocations had already enraged her but she had been restraining herself. I've got no objections. Su Zimo replied indifferently, however, the outcome of this weapon refinement fight is clear. Thereafter, he beckoned gently to the weapon tripod that was floating in midair and a large number of flying swords hovered out. There were a total of 35. Including the one earlier, there were a total of 36 flying swords that were identical. The 36 flying swords shone in harmony with the blazing sun above their heads, emitting a milky white glow that was increasingly resplendent. Pust! The crowd gasped. That scene was way too shocking. Even the 3 Dharma characteristic Tao lords present watched with widened eyes in disbelief. What in the world is that? This person refined a total of 36 flying swords and all of them are connate dermic weapons? Not only are there 36 connate dermic weapons, they are identical as well. This is a complete set of flying swords. This is way too terrifying. Heavens! Is this even humanly possible? It was shocking enough that he could refine a single connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. But now, Su Zimo threw out a huge lump of them. The visual and mental impact was indescribable. The cultivators were dumbfounded and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. What's the background of this guy? Everyone else has to painstakingly create a single connate dermic weapon and yet he's able to mass-produce them? What's the point of competing then? Ming Han is bloody weak compared to this. As though he was struck by lightning, Ming Han slumped to the ground with widened eyes. His mind went blank as he shook his head repeatedly. This is impossible, this is impossible. The repeated blows had already left him in a daze. Chapter 947, Declaration of War. Chapter 947, Declaration of War. When Su Zimo saw that the situation was set, he beckoned gently and put away the 36 flying swords. No matter what, his flying swords were not connate dermic weapons. If the entire set was exposed for too long, there was no guarantee that nothing would happen. Even if the 36 flying swords were gathered together, they did not take up much space. Holding them in his palm, Su Zimo casually swiped his brow and the 36 flying swords entered his right eye silently. Even if your 100 Refinement sect wins this weapon refinement battle, it doesn't mean anything. The person who spoke was seated at the front of Hellfire Hall. He was the only void reversion of Hellfire Hall for this trip and his Dao title was Refinement Peak. Everyone knew that by saying that, it meant that Hellfire Hall had admitted defeat. Dao being Refinement Peak's face darkened as he said slowly, in a weapon refinement battle between grandmasters, there's nobody from 100 Refinement sect that can match our Hall Master. That's not for sure. Su Zimo replied indifferently, if you guys from Hellfire Hall are indignant, 100 Refinement sect will come looking for you guys after the tea party. I'm just afraid that you won't dare to accept the challenge at that time. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect felt guilty. They were well aware that no one in the sect could surpass the master of Hellfire Hall in terms of weapon refinement. The reason why Su Zimo dared to say that was naturally because of Dao Lord Extreme Fire. After the tea party, Dao Lord Extreme Fire would reconstruct his body and return in a domineering manner. Given his accomplishments in weapon refinement, he would definitely not lose to the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall. Alright, let's wait and see. Dao being Refinement Peak sneered. After returning the weapon tripod to Nangong Ling, Su Zimo turned around and looked at Dao Lord Lan Yu who was not far away. Senior, the outcome of this weapon refinement battle should be clear. Please give me some tea. Dao Lord Lan Yu was extremely unwilling. However, she naturally could not break the rules set by Thousand Cranes sect in front of everyone. Taking a deep breath, Dao Lord Lan Yu composed herself and said slowly, grant the tea. Before long, a steaming cup of supreme-grade mystic tea was handed to Su Zimo. The Dharma characteristic elder of Thousand Cranes sect was comparatively friendly towards Su Zimo and nodded with a smile. This tea is best drunk when it's warm. Drink it and use your essence spirit to comprehend the mysteries within. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo received the supreme-grade mystic tea but did not drink it. Instead, he carried the teacup and returned to the front of 100 Refinement sect. Have a drink. Under countless gazes, Su Zimo handed the supreme-grade mystic tea to Lu Hanyan. The cultivators were moved. The true focus of Thousand Crane Tea Party was the mystic tea. The reason why all the nascent soul paragons of the Middle Continent gathered here was none other than to drink a cup of mystic tea. Even the ordinary mystic tea was an incredible opportunity alongside incomparable glory. Furthermore, there were only 5 cups of supreme-grade mystic tea. To be precise, up till this point of the tea party, there were only 2 cups remaining, including the one in Su Zimo's hands. But now, he had given away the supreme-grade mystic tea. Isn't that Mo Ling way too generous? The moment he appeared earlier on, he gave away a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon. Now, he's even giving away a supreme-grade mystic tea. I can't take it anymore. I've already fallen for him. A Thousand Crane sect female cultivator whispered with an infatuated expression. Another female cultivator murmured as well, I can't take it anymore. If I were in her shoes, I would have fainted from happiness the moment that supreme-grade mystic tea was handed to me. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect widened their eyes in shock too. Many people looked at Su Zimo and Lu Hanyan with odd expressions. Could it be that the beauty of 100 Refinement sect was already taken? Ru Xian felt a little envious and upset. Nangong Ling's expression dimmed as well. As time passed by, he realized that the gap between him and little Granduncle Master was getting wider and wider, even beyond his reach. Perhaps, only Lu Hanyan knew that Su Zimo had no feelings for her. Don't think too much. Su Zimo said softly, Hanyan failed her spirit gathering and it will be difficult for her injured essence spirit to recover completely. This supreme-grade mystic tea can heal her essence spirit. Ru Xian and Nangong Ling's hearts skipped a beat. They could tell that Su Zimo was saying that to them. Nangong Ling was relieved and smiled foolishly. He turned to Lu Hanyan and said, that's right. Once you drink this tea, Hanyan, there's a high chance that your essence spirit will recover immediately. But, you were the one who won this cup of tea, Granduncle Master. Lu Hanyan's eyes were red as she choked, it's all thanks to you that the sect's reputation is preserved. I'm not fit to drink this tea. You're thinking too much. You're the only one in the sect who's qualified to drink this cup of tea. Su Zimo smiled gently and placed the supreme-grade mystic tea in Lu Hanyan's hands. He said in an unquestionable manner, drink it. Don't feel pressured. His words were truly not meant to comfort Lu Hanyan. The reason why he was able to win the weapon refinement competition was entirely because of tricks and not because of his actual skill in weapon refinement. In 100 Refinement sect, only Lu Hanyan was qualified to drink this tea. Go ahead and drink it, little Granduncle Master has already said so. Nangong Ling persuaded with a smile. Lu Hanyan shook her head still. There's only 1 cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. If I take it, Granduncle Master will have nothing at all. Lu Hanyan said, Granduncle Master is also at the nascent soul realm. This supreme-grade mystic tea is extremely important to him too. Who said that there's only 1 cup of supreme-grade mystic tea? Su Zimo smiled gently and pointed to the only remaining green tea leaf on the tip of the mystic tea tree. There's another cup. Ah. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were stunned before their expressions changed. Everyone knew that the remaining cup was for the final victor of the fight between the Paragons, the number 1 perfected Lord of Middle Continent. By saying that, did little Granduncle Master mean? Nangong Ling hurriedly sent a voice transmission, little Granduncle Master, don't be rash. 100 Refinement sect has fulfilled our purpose for this trip and there's no need for us to cause trouble. The matter of 100 Refinement sect has ended, but mine has only just started. Patting Nangong Ling on the shoulder, Su Zimo said softly, for everything that's going to happen next, neither you nor 100 Refinement sect should get involved. Before Nangong Ling and the others could react, Su Zimo had already turned around and said word by word, I'm going to get my hands on that final cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. The crowd was in an uproar. A declaration of war. That was a blatant declaration of war. Such guts. Seated on the throne, Yi Tiancheng was still motionless as he said coldly with a murderous gaze. Splash. The 9 WIRMs were ready to charge as demonic chi surged and the gigantic chains on their bodies let out a terrifying sound. The remaining 8 maidservants beside him glared at Su Zimo coldly. It's finally about to begin? Perfected Lord Pang Lon of Heavenly Dipper sect said with a smile as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Clang! Jian Wuzong could not hold it in any longer and drew his sword right away. He glared at Su Zimo with a vicious glint, prepared to charge forward at any moment to wash away his shame. This time round, he wielded his sword first. He did not heed Hang Qiuyu's advice at all. He was third on the phenomenon ranking. Although Hang Qiuyu was his senior brother, he was only ranked 8th on the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago and even lost to an unknown sword cultivator. In Jian Wuzong's heart, Hang Qiuyu could not be compared to him. Clang! 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 The sound of blades being unsheathed echoed. Many paragons stood up with surging battle intent. The fight between paragons was about to begin. Chapter 948, Get Down. Chapter 948, Get Down. Looking at Su Zimo's back view, Nangong Ling and the other 2 exchanged glances with conflicted expressions. For some reason, the 3 of them felt that Su Zimo's words earlier on had another meaning. The 3 of them guessed correctly. Su Zimo's words were to draw a clear line between him and 100 Refinement sect. If he were to fight against the paragons, he might not be able to hide his identity. He did not want to cause too much trouble for 100 Refinement sect. How arrogant. I'll see what happens to you. Who do you think you are? There's only 1 cup of supreme grade mystic tea and you think you can get your hands on it just because you want to? Fufu, only the number 1 perfected lord of the Middle Continent is qualified to have the supreme grade mystic tea. How dare you? There was no need for Yi Tiancheng to say anything. There were already many nascent soul paragons present who could not hold back and stood out, mocking and ridiculing. In their hearts, there were only a few people who could become the number 1 perfected lord. How could Mo Ling compare to them? Furthermore, Su Zimo's tone displeased the nascent soul paragons. If Yi Tiancheng were to say something like that, they would endure it even if they were displeased. Mo Ling was completely unknown and only rose to fame in the past month. Most cultivators had not heard of him before and were naturally indignant. Little Granduncle Master, even if you want to take part in the Paragon battle, you should rest first. Nangong Ling hurriedly sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and reminded, you've just participated in the weapon refinement competition and must have consumed a lot of your mental strength. It's not good for you to start a fight now. At the same time, Perfected Lord Pang Lon chuckled and shook his head. He's a young man after all. He can't control his temper. Senior brother, what do you mean? A cultivator asked. Perfected Lord Pang Lon said resolutely, that lad has just refined so many connate dermic weapons and expended a lot of his energy. Now that he's rushing to challenge Yi Tiancheng, he's definitely courting death. I'm willing to bet that he'll be exhausted to death by the other paragons before Yi Tiancheng even makes a move. How strong was Su Zimo's hearing? Although Perfected Lord Pang Lan's voice was as soft as a mosquito and insignificant in the noisy crowd, he could hear it clearly. However, he was calm and did not mind at all. That was because the situation Nangong Ling and Perfected Lord Pang Lon were concerned about was completely non-existent. He was merely putting on an act for the weapon refinement earlier on and did not expend any energy at all. Dao Lord Lan Yu stood up slowly and said in a deep voice, since everyone can't wait any longer, I'll now announce the official start of the Paragon battle. The moment she said that, Su Zimo turned around and pointed at Yi Tiancheng who was sitting high and mighty on his throne, saying slowly, get down. Everyone was shocked. What was going on? Did it mean that Mo Ling wanted to challenge the number 1 perfected lord, Yi Tiancheng? Was this person tired of living and could not wait to die? Yi Tiancheng sat motionlessly on the throne and looked down at Su Zimo coldly with disdain. At this point, he was no longer anxious. In his eyes, Su Zimo was already a dead man. Or rather, there was no need for him to do it personally. Hee hee. What a joke. Who do you think you are to challenge my master? The two maidservants beside Yi Tiancheng smirked. Ha 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 ha. This Mo Ling doesn't even know the rules of the Paragon battle and he's jumping out to die. Interesting. A series of laughter burst forth from the crowd. Oh. Surveying his surroundings, Su Zimo asked, what rules are there for the Paragon battle? Dao Lord Lan Yu said in a deep voice, apart from Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan who are at the top of the phenomenon ranking, all the other paragons have to fight in pairs until 2 victors are decided. Only then can they challenge Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan. Yi Tiancheng grinned. In other words, you're not even qualified to challenge me. Frowning, Su Zimo looked at Dao Lord Lan Yu and asked, if I want to fight against Yi Tiancheng, I'll have to fight against the other paragons one step at a time? That's right. Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded. Otherwise, Yi Tiancheng be annoyed to death if he's challenged by just about anybody? Oh, got it. Su Zimo nodded with a calm expression. He looked around and said indifferently, I'm going to cripple Yi Tiancheng now. Anyone who wishes to stop me can come up. There's no need to fight in pairs. Anyone who's unhappy can come at me at any time. I'll take them all. The crowd was in an uproar. Is he crazy? He wants to suppress all the paragons here by himself? I think he really thinks that he's the #1 perfected lord and wants to sweep through all the paragons present. He's truly courting death. Not to mention the other cultivators, everyone from 100 Refinement sect was stunned. Little Granduncle Master must be crazy. Nangong Ling shook his head repeatedly and murmured. Even Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan would not be so arrogant as to dare to claim that they can suppress all the paragons present. To be precise, apart from Leng Ro, Little Fatty, and the others who knew about Su Zimo's background, almost no one present thought highly of him. Of course, there were a few cultivators who frowned in deep thought and retained their opinions. Among them was Hang Qiuyu of Sword Sect. Jian Wuzong reared his head in laughter and grit his teeth. That man is extremely arrogant and thinks nothing of the heroes of the world. He's courting death. Not necessarily. Hang Qiuyu shook his head. At the very least, in his memories, there was a monster incarnate who had the strength to make such bold claims. He would never forget that person for the rest of his life. That figure had shocked him way too much in both the ancient battlefields. Fairy Luo Shui, the only void reversion of Snowdrift Valley, looked at the green figure and murmured softly, how bold. If this person isn't a lunatic, his boldness alone is enough to fight for the title of the #1 perfected lord. After pondering for a moment, Dao Lord Lan Yu reminded him, in the Paragon battle, you're not allowed to fight to the death or target the essence spirit. The crowd was in an uproar. There were already many nascent soul paragons who could not hold themselves back and wanted to charge forward to fight Su Zimo. In reality, there were not many paragons of the major sects and factions in the Middle Continent who truly had grudges with Su Zimo. However, at that moment, many paragons were tempted. Apart from some who were indignant and wanted to teach Su Zimo a lesson, most of them targeted the treasures on him. Only fighting to the death was disallowed for the Paragon battle. However, there were no restrictions against fighting for the other party's treasures. If they could defeat Su Zimo, everyone could have a legitimate reason to snatch away all of Su Zimo's treasures, including the 36 Khanate flying swords that were revealed earlier on. In the eyes of the cultivators right now, Su Zimo was like a massive treasure trove that was waiting for them to fight for. Many cultivators glared at Su Zimo with clear greed in their eyes. Su Zimo's gaze was cold. Sensing the intentions of the paragons, he said slowly, also, don't blame me for not reminding everyone. You're not allowed to fight to the death in the Paragon battle, but I'm extremely heavy-handed. The person I'm going to cripple is Yi Tiancheng. It's best not to look for trouble if you're unrelated. Chapter 949, Singlehanded Suppression. Chapter 949, Singlehanded Suppression. How arrogant. I've been pissed off at your attitude since a long time ago. A paragon from Peach Blossom Peak, an upper sect of the Middle Continent stood out and strode towards Su Zimo, shouting, "I'm perfected Lord Tianliang, come." Before he could finish, he felt a green figure flash by. Bang! Before he could react, his chest was struck by a tremendous impact and he was sent flying, spitting out blood. That person laid on the ground motionlessly. Although his essence spirit was fine, the bones in his chest were shattered by Su Zimo's punch and he fainted on the spot in unbearable pain. The nascent soul paragon of Peach Blossom Peak merely showed his face and said half a sentence before being drowned in the crowd. "I heard that you're a sword cultivator as well. I'm Yen Ling of the Unparalleled Sword Sect. Do show me the way." A sword cultivator rushed out from the crowd and drew his sword before he even got close. The sword glowed in a piercingly cold manner. When the sword approached, it split into two and pierced towards Su Zimo's eyes with a sharp sword chi. Unparalleled Sword Sect was also one of the upper sects of the Middle Continent. Their sword techniques were known to be beguiling. This unparalleled sword Dao could be considered as one of the sect's secret skills. If one was caught off guard, they would be injured easily. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. At the end of the day, the sword technique was nothing more than an illusion technique. Although it looked like there were two swords, in reality, only one of them was real. Su Zimo had terrifying eyesight after cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness all year round. Even without using the illumination dragon eye, he could see the flaws in the sword technique. Without dodging or retreating, Su Zimo extended his finger and flicked gently towards one of the incoming swords. Clang! The tip of his finger collided against the sword. There was the sound of metal clashing. The true body of the sword appeared and the sword quivered. Yen Ling's expression changed. Although Su Zimo merely flicked his finger casually, Yen Ling was the only one who could sense the terrifying power that was released. His palm was torn and blood gushed out. Yen Ling could not hold on to his sword and it flew out of his hands. Just as he was about to retreat, Su Zimo had already seized the opportunity and leaned against him gently. Yen Ling felt as though a massive mountain had slammed into him. His tendons and bones felt as though they were about to split apart as he was sent flying before slamming heavily onto the ground and fainting. He defeated two paragons in 2 moves. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Another 5 figures darted out and took up 5 different positions, revolving around Su Zimo with mysterious footsteps. They were the paragons of 5 Elements sect. When he first arrived at Thousand Cranes sect, Su Zimo had a conflict with the disciples of 5 Elements sect. Now that 5 Elements sect heard that Su Zimo wanted to suppress the paragon's presence single-handedly, they summoned their 5 Elements formation and surrounded him. "Arrogant fool, let's see how long you can last in this 5 Elements formation," a paragon of 5 Elements sect said coldly. Once the 5 Elements formation was activated, anything that was related to the 5 Elements would be weakened infinitely, be it weapons or dermic arts. Furthermore, as the formation changed, the power of their dermic arts would increase as well. What 5 Elements formation? Break! Su Zimo sneered and stomped on the ground. Boom! The ground quaked violently. Shocked, the 5 paragons shuddered and nearly fell to the ground. Even the channeling of the formation came to a stop. It was a fleeting opening that was difficult for others to catch. However, who was Su Zimo? He was the strongest monster incarnate in history. To him, this fleeting opening was the difference between victory as well as life and death. A paragon of 5 Elements sect had just stabilized himself and was about to continue channeling the formation when Su Zimo arrived and roared. The person felt as though a thunderbolt struck his mind and he froze. Furthermore, that was Su Zimo holding back. Otherwise, if Su Zimo were to use Thunderclap kill at this distance, that person's essence spirit would be killed on the spot. Su Zimo's palm pressed gently on the person's chest. Snap! The person's chest caved in and he spat out blood, fainting on the spot. With one person severely injured, the 5 Elements formation could no longer be activated. In a flash, Zimo arrived before the 5 Elements sect cultivators and sent the remaining 4 paragons flying with a few punches and kicks. In his hands, paragons were as frail as babies. That person's physique is extremely strong and he is terrifying in melee combat. We can't fight him up close. A nascent soul paragon reminded loudly. Immediately after, more than 10 paragons stood out. However, they did not approach Zimo and merely stood far away, condensing dermic arts and controlling dermic weapons. Shoo! 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 Dermic weapons tore through the air one after another. Many paragons no longer held back and used their trump cards. Bang! Boom! Boom! Many dermic arts descended, covering the skies with a terrifying might. Zimo's expression was unchanged as his hands changed continuously, forming a mysterious hand seal. Opening his mouth slightly, he hollered, "Pa!" The entire world went silent with that Sanskrit exclamation. Lowering his head, Zimo had a dignified expression and a divine Buddhist light shone from his body, illuminating all living beings. It was the Daming Dermic Seal combined with the Daming Mantra. The power of the dermic seal was at its limits. Furthermore, this was the only defensive dermic seal among the 6 Daming dermic seals, immovable foundation seal. Many dermic arts descended and dissipated the moment they made contact with the Buddha light without any ripples. Many dermic weapons froze in midair as well, trembling slightly and unable to stab down. Zimo remained unmoved and conjured a dermic seal with his hands, neutralizing the attacks of more than 10 paragons. When the monks of the 3 major Buddhist monasteries caught sight of this, their expressions changed as disbelief filled their eyes. Many of them recognized the origin of the dermic seal. Normally speaking, the Daming True Sutra was long lost. It was said that the cultivators who released the dermic seal recently were 2 people who appeared 100 years ago. One of them was the top of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago and the other was the 5th on the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago. Later on, the latter joined Depamra Temple as a young monk. But now, this top-tier cultivation technique of the Buddhist monasteries had surfaced from the hands of another cultivator. Narrowing her gaze, Tao Lord Lanyu focused on Zimo and swept her spirit consciousness across him. Finally, Tao Lord Lanyu discovered something amiss. Sect Master, what's wrong? Tao Lord Lanyu shook her head without saying anything. She merely frowned in deep thought. Right then, as though he had thought of something, Ming Han of Hellfire Hall suddenly charged forward with a ferocious expression and shouted, "I got it! I got it!" Those 36 flying swords earlier on were not connate dermic weapons. They were. Zimo swept his gaze and conjured hand seals. A ball of golden flames had already formed on his fingertips and floated towards Ming Han. Buddhist Tao fire. Before Ming Han could finish his sentence, he saw a ball of golden flames flying over. Frightened out of his wits, he hurriedly conjured a hellfire spear and thrust it towards the golden flames. Shing! The hellfire spear was minuscule and defenseless against the golden flames and was extinguished instantly. Before Ming Han could react, Zimo had already closed in and grabbed his throat, whispering into his ear, "You know too much." Snap! Ming Han's throat was crushed by Zimo. Although his essence spirit was still present, the rupture of his throat was equivalent to crippling him. Chapter 950, Fatal Encirclement. Chapter 950, Fatal Encirclement. Ming Han's words did not arouse much suspicion. The cultivators present merely thought that he was spouting nonsense after suffering a breakdown because he could not withstand the series of blows. The initial group of nascent soul paragons did not retreat. Each of them controlled their dermic weapons and conjured hand seals, preparing to attack Zimo once more. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 10 more nascent soul paragons gathered, ready to take advantage of the situation. Zimo conjured hand seals and chanted Sanskrit. Boom. Golden light filled the skies. A gigantic golden palm tore through the firmament, covering the skies as it descended. The palm patterns on the golden palm were clearly visible and shone with a blinding golden light, suppressing the dozens of nascent soul paragons in midair with a majestic aura. Kill. Many nascent soul paragons attacked one after another, turning their dermic weapons to stab towards the golden palm. Clang. 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 Numerous dermic weapons stabbed into the palm and sparks flew everywhere. There was no way they could shake that divine and mighty palm. Many dermic arts struck it, but nothing happened. It was one of the damning dermic seals, Immortal Trap Seal. After Zimo advanced to the nascent soul realm, the damning dermic seal was activated with his essence spirit. Coupled with the damning mantra and Mingwang prayer beads, its power was already at its limits. Bang! Boom! Boom! The golden palm continued crushing down. Dodge! Many cultivators saw that the situation was not looking good and wanted to break free from the golden palm's range. However, the 5 fingers of the golden palm were already bending and closing, as though they were forming a prison. The immortal trap seal could even trap true immortals. No matter how many cultivators tried to escape, they could not break free from the cage formed by the 5 golden fingers. It was an extremely uncomfortable feeling. It was obvious that they would be able to escape with just a single step more. However, no matter how they fled, they could not break free of the range. The dozens of paragons could only watch helplessly as the 5 fingers closed in continuously, holding them together and exerting strength. All of them were squeezed together by that gigantic golden palm that rained in continuously. The crowd was shocked when they saw that. Ah! Finally, one of the paragons could not hold it in and let out a hysterical shriek with a horrified expression. Poof! 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 Under that immense pressure, blood mists burst forth from the bodies of many cultivators and their bones were snapped. One after another, figures fell to the ground. Although they did not die, their bodies were severely injured and it would be difficult for them to recover completely in the future. In the blink of an eye, dozens of nascent soul paragons were defeated. Everyone was shocked. The nascent souls that were initially restless stopped in their tracks and hesitated, not daring to move forward. Domineering. Ruthless. Decisive to kill. Those were the only thoughts in the minds of many cultivators as they looked at the green figure at the center of the battlefield. All the nascent souls that went up earlier on ended up in miserable states. Broken arms and legs were already considered minor injuries. Some cultivators were completely crippled. His domineering methods stunned all the nascent souls who wanted to hit him while he was down and take advantage of the situation. None of them dared to act rashly now. Isn't he a sword cultivator? How does he know Buddhist dermic arts? What dermic art is that? It doesn't seem like it belongs to the 6 Buddhist monasteries. Why is it so terrifying? Is he really going to sweep through all the paragons single-handedly? The initial fervor of the group of cultivators was completely suppressed by Zimo's thunderous methods. Tiancheng sat on his throne with a calm expression. Fu. Perfected Lord Pang Lan smiled indifferently and was not bothered. The methods that Zimo displayed right now were indeed powerful and stunning. However, they were not enough to threaten him. Furthermore, they knew one thing. In their eyes, the dozens of nascent soul paragons that Zimo defeated were nothing and could be suppressed easily. That was because true paragons had pride in their hearts. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, true paragons could not be bothered to join forces with others. Furthermore, monster incarnates like him and Tiancheng were renowned. Even if they managed to defeat Zimo by joining forces, it would be an unfair victory. They could not afford to lose face like this. At that moment, all the cultivators were stunned by Zimo's sharp methods and did not dare to advance. Jian Wuzong sneered and finally stood out. Perfected Lord Pang Lan smiled when he saw that. You want to challenge us? The test has just begun. Jian Wuzong, don't go. Hang Qiuyu frowned and reminded with a voice transmission. Humph. Jian Wuzong harumphed and asked instead, why? Are you going to help me retrieve the startling dermic sword, senior brother? There's no hurry. Hang Xiuyu said in a deep voice, this person's background. Fu. Before Hang Xiuyu could finish, he was interrupted by Jian Wuzong's cold laughter. Senior brother, I think you just want to stand by and watch me make a fool of myself. I'll take back the sword that I lost personally. It's none of your business. Jian Wuzong said coldly and walked toward Su Zimo with his sword in hand. Prepare to attack and kill that person at all costs. Yi Tiancheng sent a voice transmission expressionlessly. The 8 maidservants beside him nodded. The third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong, is here to take revenge for his previous humiliation. Last time, Jian Wuzong did not display his true strength without a sword in his hands. This is the only way to see who's stronger. Amidst the discussions of the crowd, Jian Wuzong walked towards Su Zimo step by step. He wielded his sword casually and sparks flashed as the tip of his sword sliced across the ground. Although Jian Wuzong looked lazy and was full of openings, no one dared to underestimate him. That was because no one knew when he would strike. When he struck, it would definitely be an attack that could shock the heavens. The distance between the two of them narrowed constantly. One was passive while the other was active. The air seemed to have frozen and was suffocating. All of a sudden, a breathtaking sword beam appeared and pierced Su Zimo's throat, arriving instantly. It was like lightning that tore through the night sky. It was too fast. That was the only thought in everyone's minds. Many paragons instinctively thought that if they were in the same position, they would not be able to react to that sword. Even Dao Lord Lan Yu's eyes lit up. As expected of third on the phenomenon ranking, there were probably less than 10 nascent souls present who could defend against that single slash. At the same time, 8 figures beside Yi Tiancheng moved. Yi played the flute. The bitter sound of the flute sounded, mournful and unsettling. Yi Si scattered flowers. The petals fell with a chilling killing intent. Yi Wu fanned her folding fan. The wind howled and sand flew everywhere. The figures of the other maidservants flashed and they took out their dermic weapons, charging forward with daggers, needles and sabers. The timing of the 8 maidservants was perfect. They sealed off all of Su Zimo's escape routes. There was no way to retreat. At that moment, Jian Wuzong had just attacked. It was an attack that everyone would have to focus on, as though they were approaching an abyss. Nobody could afford to be distracted. At the same time, the attack of the 8 maidservants was equivalent to pushing Su Zimo into the abyss. Perfected Lord Pang Lan retracted his smile. If he was merely facing Jian Wuzong's attack, he would be able to defend. However, even he might not be able to escape unscathed from this encirclement. Chapter 951, Sword Snatching, Counterattack. Chapter 951, Sword Snatching, Counterattack. Leng Ro, Little Fatty, and the others turned nervous. After all, they had not seen Su Zimo for 100 years and they did not know how strong he was right now. Leng Ro looked at the startling dermic sword in her hands and suddenly felt regret. If she had returned the Kane perfected Lord dermic weapon to Su Zimo earlier on, it might have been of some use at this critical juncture. But now, Su Zimo was standing on the spot, unarmed and fighting with his bare hands. Jian Wuzong's sword was already at his throat. At this distance, it was already too late for Su Zimo to retrieve his dermic weapon from his storage bag. Furthermore, the 8 maidservants of Yi Tiancheng had already surrounded him and sealed off all his escape routes. Arrogant fellow, let's see where you can hide. Yi Jiao said hatefully with a cold gaze. A look of joy flashed through Jian Wuzong's eyes as well. He could almost see Su Zimo's throat being pierced by his sword the next moment. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Su Zimo reared his head and roared with laughter that was deafening. Jian Wuzong frowned slightly. He had suddenly noticed that even in the face of such an encirclement, Su Zimo's eyes were filled with mockery instead of panic. Thereafter, Su Zimo said indifferently, "If I can snatch your sword once, I can do it again." He was the strongest monster incarnate in history. He had no intention of dodging attacks as such. There was no need for it either. Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo suddenly struck. His entire arm went limp and he flung it out with a thud, like the trunk of a primordial divine elephant against the incoming sword. A coil and a tremble. "Ah!" Jian Wuzong exclaimed. He sensed an extremely terrifying power that twisted and trembled before erupting. His palm could not hold the sword at all. The sword vibrated and his palm was torn apart. Blood oozed from the muscles on his arm. In a flash, the sword flew out of his hands and was snatched away by Su Zimo. Nobody could tell what happened the moment the two of them exchanged blows. Even Jian Wuzong himself could not see clearly either. Everyone only knew that the sword had changed owners in the blink of an eye. No one could understand the fear in Jian Wuzong's heart right now. Although his current sword was not a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon, it was still a perfect Dermic weapon that was extremely sharp and could slice through metal like mud. He truly could not imagine that someone of the same cultivation realm could snatch his sword barehanded. Such methods and powerful physique were way beyond his understanding. At that moment, there was only a single thought in Jian Wuzong's mind. Run. With his sword snatched away, Jian Wuzong did not hesitate and burst in retreat. Immediately after, he felt an extremely terrifying aura that caused his scalp to tingle. Su Zimo extended his left hand and closed two fingers together like a sword, slashing in his direction casually. Chi! A sword chi burst forth from Su Zimo's fingertip. It was a blinding white. In that instant, the entire world shook and the weather changed. Heaven-slaying sword art. The sword snatching and counterattack happened at almost the same time. Even the cultivators in the entire mystic courtyard felt a chilling killing intent, let alone Jian Wuzong. Pust. The crowd gasped. What a terrifying sword chi. Apart from sword sect, was there another sword art in Tianhuang mainland that was this terrifying? I know. Chengpeng of Heavenly Dipper sect was crippled by that sword chi. Someone exclaimed. Initially, Dao Lord Pang Lan had the thought of watching a show. However, after the sword chi burst forth, he felt a chill run down his spine. Instinctively, he sat upright with a grim expression. Dao Lord Lan Yu's expression changed slightly as her eyes narrowed. She was a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord and her cultivation realm far surpassed everyone else's. She could sense everything clearly. It was clear that Imo Ling had yet to unleash the true might of the sword chi. Even so, it was enough to destroy everything. Compared to this sword chi, Jian Wuzong's attack earlier paled in comparison, as though he was a kid that was waving a sword wildly. The cultivators at the side felt their hearts skip a beat. It was easy to imagine the current situation of Jian Wuzong. It was as though he could smell death. Jian Wuzong's pupils constricted as he conjured hand seals repeatedly. Dermic powers surged and a gigantic dermic power sword was formed between his palms. Slay! With a furious roar, he waved his dermic power sword and slashed viciously at the incoming sword chi. Shing! There was a soft sound. It was almost inaudible. The dermic power sword in Jian Wuzong's hands was sliced into two by the thin white sword chi and dissipated instantly. However, the sword chi did not pause at all and stabbed towards Jian Wuzong's chest. A dermic art of sword sect could not defend against the sword chi at all. Jian Wuzong had a ferocious expression and green veins popped out on his neck, his eyes filled with indignance. Although the sword chi might not be able to kill him, it would definitely destroy his body once it entered his body. He had never seen such a terrifying sword chi even back in sword sect. I'm indignant. Jian Wuzong let out his final roar. All of a sudden. Just as Jian Wuzong was about to give up, a massive tug on his arm pulled him back. Jian Wuzong's figure floated and he fell towards the front of Sword Sect. In the blink of an eye, he caught sight of a familiar figure who shielded him. Senior brother. Jian Wuzong jolted. Heng Qiuyu chose to stand out when he was on the brink of death. Senior brother, help me kill him. Jian Wuzong shouted through gritted teeth. Heng Qiuyu did not reply. He could not speak either. When he stood in front of the sword chi properly, Heng Qiuyu felt the fear full and proper. Unknowingly, beads of sweat appeared on his face. Buzz. Heng Qiuyu struck. A breathtaking sword beam appeared. 6 dermic patterns, a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. Wherever the sword beam passed, all life in the void seemed to be sucked away by it. Lifeless sword art. That sword art was a secret skill that was deduced by the Sword Sect's founder master through one of the 3 ancient sword arts and possessed shocking might. Clang. The sword chi and sword tip collided. Endless killing intent filled the air. The void where they collided seemed to be sliced into pieces. Heng Qiuyu shuddered and staggered 3 steps back. With every step, his feet sank deeply into the ground, leaving a clear footprint. The terrifying sword chi finally dissipated. However, Heng Qiuyu's arm that was gripping his sword was still trembling uncontrollably. Even with his connate dermic weapon and the lifeless sword art, he could barely defend against the sword chi. What was the origin of that sword chi? What scared Heng Qiuyu even more was not the sword chi. It was the person who released the sword chi. After releasing that sword chi, Mo Ling turned around and faced the 8 maidservants of Yi Tiancheng without turning back. He did not even look at them once. Nobody could match his confidence. The true reason why Heng Qiuyu's heart sank was because of that person's identity. Chapter 952, Who Are You? Chapter 952, Who Are You? On the battlefield. It only took a single moment for Su Zimo to snatch the sword and release the heaven-slaying sword art. At the same time, the attacks of the 8 maidservants had already arrived. The first to arrive was Yi Yi's flute. The mournful sound of the flute could disrupt the minds of cultivators and even affect their essence spirits. However, it was a pity that Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and his 7 orifices were incomparably strong. The sound of the flute could not affect his mind at all. As for affecting his essence spirit, that was even more impossible. The sound of the flute could not even penetrate the layer of defense set up by the Mingwang prayer beads. Immediately after, a violent gust of wind swept over. If it was a cultivator with a weaker physique, they would have been swept up by the gust of wind or staggered and swayed. However, it was a pity that Su Zimo's physique was strong and he stood firmly on the ground as though he was rooted. Yi Si's petals flew over with the wind. The other 5 maidservants had also closed in. Right then, Su Zimo had just snatched the sword from Jian Wuzong's hands. Turning around, he twisted his wrist and the sword vibrated. He snatched the sword, counterattacked and spun to slash with the sword in one single motion. Whoosh! Waving the sword in his hand, Su Zimo slashed viciously at the void before him. The sword slashed down and a tsunami sound could be heard. Right after, a boundless ocean seemed to appear before the eyes of many cultivators. At the center of the sea, waves surged and spun endlessly, forming a gigantic vortex that rumbled with a terrifying might. The entire space seemed to have been distorted by the terrifying vortex. Using his sword as a saber, Su Zimo released Vortex of the Sea Calming Manual. Pust! What a strong sword intent! What sort of sword technique is this? It seems to be lacking in the sharpness of the Tao of the sword. Instead, it seems more dignified. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. There were 3 levels to sword Tao. Technique, force and intent. Sword techniques were the most superficial and sword forces required one to comprehend some of the aura of the sword techniques. Before the nascent soul realm, cultivators could at most comprehend the level of force. That was because the final layer of sword intent required the essence spirit to channel dermic powers and evolve the intent of the technique. The might of a top-notch sword intent was not weaker than dermic arts. Furthermore, be it sword or saber intent, the might of the sword technique would increase immensely after it was released and could affect a cultivator's mind. Right now, it was as though many cultivators were witnessing a massive ocean vortex. When he saw that, Hang Chuyu's eyes widened and he shuddered. As though he thought of something, a look of realization flashed through his eyes, followed by shock and finally fear. Sword intent? Listening to the discussions in the crowd, Hang Chuyu wanted to laugh but could not. The first stance of the Sea Calming Manual focused on defense. Space distorted with a single slash. Although Su Zimo slashed out the saber technique with a sword, the intent was the same and the power was shocking. The incoming petals were sucked into the vortex, as though they had lost their direction and were flowing along with the current. The other 5 maidservants had just charged forward when their movement techniques came to a stop and they were almost dragged away. Yi Jiu's gaze was sinister as she charged forward despite the pressure and waved her hand. A dense mass of silver needles burst forth from her sleeves. Before they even arrived, they emitted a pungent stench. Poison. It was a familiar move that was identical to the methods of poison sect cultivators. Sneering internally, Su Zimo took a deep breath of air. Just as the poison needles were about to reach his face, he suddenly opened his mouth and roared. Kill. Thunderclap kill. Boom. The voice sounded like thunder in the ears of the 8 maidservants. The first to suffer was Yi, who played the flute. The sound of the flute was interrupted instantly. Yi grunted and her face turned pale instantly. Cracks appeared on her flute, it was clearly crippled. Furthermore, Su Zimo's roar was released with the power of his lungs and a massive air current gushed out from his mouth. The poison needles were blown away by Su Zimo's breath. Immediately after, a series of peerless sword beams followed. Ripples seemed to ripple through the void towards Yi San and the other maidservants. Sea Calming Manual, Ripple Stance. Similarly, he released his saber intent with his sword. The sword beam was cold as it sliced through Yi and Yi San's throats. Both of their minds went blank from the shock of Thunderclap kill and were stunned on the spot. By the time they came to their senses, they found themselves spinning and rising into the air. They could see their own corpses. Their corpses were headless. 2 gigantic heads were beheaded by Su Zimo. Yi Ba and Yi Jiu were the closest to Su Zimo. The impact of Thunderclap kill was the strongest as well. Blood oozed from their nostrils, ears, mouths and eyes. They were bleeding from all orifices. The 2 of them fell stiffly to the ground and 2 more heads flew up before they could even touch the ground. In the blink of an eye, Yi Lu was the only one left among the 5 people who had rushed forward. Her body was the strongest among the 5 of them and that was the reason why she was able to hold out for so long. You. However, the moment she said a single word, Su Zimo had already walked over and slashed with his sword without giving her any chance. Swoosh. That sword strike created a tsunami. Yi Lu was sent flying by the sword strike the moment she raised her curved saber. Su Zimo severed her head casually. Of the 8 maidservants, only 3 remained. The 3 of you, don't leave either. Su Zimo advanced with his sword and wherever his sword passed, ripples would appear. The 3 of them were engulfed by the ripples and it was impossible for them to escape. Cling. Clang. Both parties had only exchanged 3 to 4 blows. 3 heads that were spewing blood flew into the air and fell into the dust. There were many nascent souls that attacked Su Zimo, but the 8 maidservants suffered the most tragic outcome. It was like karma. Initially, it was one of the maidservants who took action and beheaded a nascent soul. She was unreasonable and no one dared to reply. But now, their fates had turned out like this. It said that sword cultivators are ruthless and decisive in killing. Now that I'm seeing it personally, they truly live up to their reputation. That Mo Ling is way too ruthless. He doesn't know how to be tender towards women at all. The crowd was speechless. Who are you? Right then, a voice sounded from the side, seemingly questioning but suppressing something. The person's voice was quivering. Heng Qiuyu glared at Su Zimo fixedly, and his arm that was gripping his sword trembled slightly as he asked again, "Who are you?" He could tell that it was not sword intent but saber intent. Apart from the successor of Divine Phoenix Island, there was only a single person in Tianhuang mainland who knew about that saber intent. "Patron, may I know who taught you the Daming True Sutra? Please reply." Void reversion monks of wisdom, hollow and formless monasteries stood out at the same time and asked loudly with unfriendly expressions. "Fufu." Suddenly, Yi Tiancheng laughed and said darkly, "Do you think that you can fool everyone by using a sword as a saber and displaying saber intent?" He was the number one of the phenomenon ranking, the number one perfected lord of the Middle Continent. Naturally, Su Zimo's methods could not be hidden from him. Right then, Dao Lord Lan Yu stood up slowly and a suppressive might descended. "You've hidden your true appearance. Who are you exactly? How dare you disguise yourself at the Thousand Crane Tea Party?" Chapter 953, My name is Su Zimo. Chapter 953, My name is Su Zimo. The crowd was stunned. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect was stunned on the spot as well. Yi Tiancheng, Heng Qiuyu, and the monks of the Buddhist sects interrogated Su Zimo aggressively. Right now, even Dao Lord Lan Yu stood out. Furthermore, Dao Lord Lan Yu had an unfriendly expression. It was clear that she was truly enraged. Nangong Ling and the other two exchanged confused glances. Wasn't that Little Granduncle Master's original appearance? Little Granduncle Master hid his identity? What was his original identity and why did he have to hide? Leng Ro, Little Fatty, and the others looked nervous. At that moment, everyone's gazes were focused on the green-robed man in the center of the battlefield. Su Zimo smiled calmly and indifferently. He had expected this. At this point, there was no longer a need to hide. Su Zimo's body crackled and his facial muscles twitched. In the blink of an eye, his appearance changed drastically and he turned into a cultivator with delicate features. His black hair swayed and his green robes fluttered. His eyes were deep and his body exuded an aura that was so strong that it could make one shudder. Heng Qiuyu's heart skipped a beat and he took half a step back instinctively. His eyes were filled with fear and his breathing quickened. Fairy Luo Shuab's Snowdrift Valley jolted upright and her eyes lit up. "Ah!" Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect exclaimed softly and covered her mouth hurriedly with joy in her eyes. "Wow!" Ru Xian exclaimed and chuckled. "So, Little Granduncle Master actually looks like this. He's quite handsome." Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Pang Lan and the others had never seen Su Zimo before and naturally had no reaction. However, there was an unusual commotion in the crowd. "It's him. He's still alive." Unknowingly, 100 years have passed since that incident. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned. It was clear that many of the cultivators present recognized this person. However, their voices were suppressed and they did not even mention his name. It was as though that name had become a taboo. Dao Lord Lan Yu asked once more, "Who are you?" "My name is Su Zimo." Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings calmly and said in a slow manner. Instantly, the entire mystic courtyard turned silent and one could hear a pin drop. That name seemed to possess an invisible power that could deter all the cultivators from speaking, breathing, or acting rashly. Su Zimo was the number one of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, an unprecedented monster incarnate. He had once suppressed the paragons of the various major sects in the two ancient battlefields and was invincible among his peers. This man has never suffered a defeat. He created an unprecedented golden core phenomenon and left his name on the ancient phenomenon stele. Many cultivators recalled the various legends of that name. Of course, the most terrifying legends were related to the catastrophe of the paragons that broke out in myriad Phenomenon City during the battle for the Phenomenon ranking 100 years ago. Legend has it that during that catastrophe, 2 different foreign races descended and massacred the city. Corpses were strewn everywhere and blood flowed like rivers. Countless paragons were killed. More than half of the paragons on the Phenomenon ranking were dead. Thankfully, this person protected the last bit of dignity of the human race and fought a bloody battle to the death. In a situation where he was almost exhausted, he managed to kill off both foreign races. Of course, the major sects and factions forbade the details of the matter to be spread later on, and many surviving cultivators were extremely secretive about it as well. It became a taboo. As time passed by, many details were drowned in the river of time. That matter eventually became a legend. Now that 100 years had passed, there were no longer many people who thought of it to be true. As for the younger generation, they even treated it as a joke and never took it seriously. Ignoring everyone else, Nangong Ling, Ru Xian and the others of 100 Refinement sect were already filled with disdain towards Su Zimo during their casual chat. However, many of the cultivators present were lucky survivors who were once personally involved. Heng Qiuyu was. It was the same for Fairy Luo Shui. There were others. Almost all the cultivators who survived the calamity advanced to the nascent soul realm and became paragons that were eligible to participate in this event. In the hearts of these paragons, that name was invincible and taboo. That was the true number 1 of the Phenomenon ranking. Now that this person was at the nascent soul realm, he was the number 1 perfected lord. He was not the number 1 perfected lord of Middle Continent, but the number 1 perfected lord of Tianhuang mainland. Little Granduncle Master, He's. Su Zimo. Ru Xian widened her mouth in disbelief. Could the legend back then be true? Nangong Ling murmured softly, unable to recover from the shock. Lu Hanyan had a complicated expression. She had long noticed that something was amiss with Su Zimo. However, she had not expected their Granduncle Master to have such a powerful background. There seemed to be an explanation for everything at this moment. Su Zimo was most likely the only person who could possess the boldness to holler at Yi Tiancheng to get down. Su Zimo was the only one who could take down Jian Wuzong, who was ranked 3rd on the Phenomenon ranking so badly that the latter could not even withdraw his sword. Su Zimo was the only one who could take on all the paragons present single-handedly. No wonder. Lu Hanyan looked towards Leng Ro and the others who were not far away. She finally understood why Su Zimo wanted to stand out and help Leng Ro and the others to withstand the massive pressure from Yi Tiancheng and Dao Lord Lanyu. Dao Lord Lanyu narrowed her eyes with a conflicted expression. Given her status, she naturally knew everything that happened in myriad Phenomenon City 100 years ago. No matter what, Thousand Cranes sect was indebted to Su Zimo for the battle 100 years ago. Or rather, all the sects and paragons that survived 100 years ago owed Su Zimo a huge favor. However, Su Zimo's situation was complicated. This man had already offended many super sects, Glass Palace, Chaos Essence sect and Wind Thunder Palace. All of them wanted to kill him. Furthermore, that person cultivated a demon cultivation technique. Up till this point, nobody knew if he was a human or demon. As the master of Thousand Cranes sect, Dao Lord Lanyu was hesitant about how to deal with this person. There was no justice in killing him. However, if he was not killed, it would be equivalent to offending a few super sects. Instantly, Dao Lord Lanyu fell silent as well. This was an unprecedentedly strange scene. The name shocked the entire mystic courtyard into silence. Senior brother, what are you waiting for? Go up and kill this man to help me wash away my shame. Unable to hold it in, Jian Wuzong pushed Heng Qiuyu. Heng Qiuyu glared at Su Zimo with a dark expression without saying anything. Jian Wuzong grit his teeth and said hatefully, that sword art of his can't be released a second time within a short period of time. Senior brother, help me kill him. Shut up. Heng Qiuyu spun around and gave Jian Wuzong a tight slap. Jian Wuzong was stunned from the blow. With a cold gaze, Heng Qiuyu glared at Jian Wuzong and ordered coldly, Scram. Don't embarrass yourself here. Do you know who he is? Senior brother, are you afraid? Jian Wuzong burst into laughter. What happened 100 years ago was merely a baseless rumor. To think that you would be frightened by someone whose name has been exaggerated. Ha ha ha. Rumor? Heng Qiuyu replied coldly, everything was true. How do you know? You didn't see it with your own eyes. Jian Wuzong could not continue. He suddenly recalled that Heng Qiuyu was ranked 8th on the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago and had personally experienced everything in Myriad Phenomenon City. Chapter 954, You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. Chapter 954, You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. Heng Qiuyu looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away, with a conflicted expression. Although they had only exchanged half a move, he knew that the difference between them was even greater than before. At that moment, when the name Su Zimo was mentioned, Heng Qiuyu realized that did not even possess the courage to attack this man any longer. The void reversion of Sword Sect narrowed his eyes and asked with a cold glint, is he really as strong as the rumors say? Yes. Heng Qiuyu replied firmly without hesitation. Fufu. The void reversion of Sword Sect sneered. No matter what, he's only the top of the phenomenon ranking. There are 2 people at the top of the phenomenon rankings here and he doesn't have any extra limbs. Heng Qiuyu shook his head. There have been many people who were at the top of the phenomenon rankings in history, but he's different. Fufu, what difference can there be? The void reversion of Sword Sect sneered once more. What are you doing? Turning around, Heng Qiuyu asked with a frown. The void reversion of Sword Sect said coldly, I heard that he's a demon. Since he's a demon, we'll naturally kill him with all our might. There's no need for any morals. Heng Qiuyu said sternly, I advise you not to harbor any designs on him. Heng Qiuyu was truly advising from the bottom of his heart. Without experiencing the catastrophe of Myriad Phenomenon City personally, no one would be able to understand how terrifying this green-robed scholar was. No matter how strong he is, can he defeat someone at the Void Reversion realm and defend against my sword? The Void Reversion of Sword Sect pursed his lips. To think that you're truly afraid, as Jian Wuzong said. Heng Qiuyu, you've truly disappointed me. I admit, I'm scared. Without hiding anything, Heng Qiuyu paused for a moment before changing the topic. But even if I'm not afraid, I won't attack him. Anyone from Sword Sect can attack him except me. 100 years ago, I owed him my life. The void reversion of Sword Sect harumphed and remained silent. Snowdrift Valley's Ling Bai glared at Su Zimo and licked his lips, looking excited and eager. Not every paragon would feel fear upon hearing that name. Although Ling Bai was ranked 20th on the phenomenon ranking, he had obtained a great opportunity after entering the nascent soul realm and believed that he was not weaker than other nascent soul paragons. He came to the Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round with the intention of shocking everyone present with his prowess. Right then, Fairy Luo Shui, the void reversion of Snowdrift Valley, stood out and cupped her fists towards Su Zimo with a smile. It's been 100 years since we parted in Myriad Phenomenon City. Do you still remember me, Brother Su? How can I forget the grace of a fairy? Su Zimo smiled as well. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, of the 13 nascent souls, only 3 chose not to escape and Fairy Luo Shui was one of them. Fairy Luo Shui also knew that it was not suitable for them to catch up at this moment. She merely exchanged some pleasantries before retreating. Snowdrift Valley disciples, listen up. Fairy Luo Shui said slowly, it's fine if you want to fight, but no one is allowed to attack Su Zimo. Huh? Why? Ling Bai was indignant and asked with a frown. Fairy Luo Shui said indifferently, continue watching, you'll find out. I won't hurt you guys. Since he is here now, unless a Dharma characteristic shows up at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, no one else will be a threat to him. At the mention of Su Zimo's name, some were wary, some were fearful, but others were indifferent. Perfected Lord Pang Lan was one of them. He was at the top of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago and was half a step into the void reversion realm. He was confident that he would be able to drink the final cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. To be fair, because of some personal trump cards, he was not even bothered by Yi Tiancheng. All these years, he had been in seclusion. He had never heard of the apocalyptic battle, much less the Paragon catastrophe, 100 years ago, and was not fearful at all. Top of the phenomenon ranking? Perfected Lord Pang Lan smiled indifferently. Who isn't one? He was older and was more mature than the other nascent soul paragons. He had no intention of attacking. The situation before him was clear. Su Zimo was bound to fight with Yi Tiancheng. All he had to do was watch from the sidelines and reap the rewards. Well. Yi Tiancheng finally moved. Rising slowly from his throne, he looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away, and grinned. The purpose for my marriage proposal this time round was merely to serve as a bait. Initially, I thought that I would be able to fish out some small fishes. To think that I would be able to fish out a huge catch. At this point, Yi Tiancheng no longer concealed the purpose of the marriage proposal. Ling Ro turned to look at Dao Lord Lanyu. Dao Lord Lanyu had an ugly expression, but she did not say anything, nor did she have any intention of apologizing to Ling Ro. As the master of a sect and Ling Ro's master, she would definitely not bow down in front of everyone despite knowing that she was in the wrong. To me, you're also bait. Su Zimo replied indifferently, Di'in has escaped a calamity by not appearing today. I'm going to use you to bait him out. Foo-foo. Yi Tiancheng laughed, his eyes filled with mockery as he shook his head. Su Zimo, oh Su Zimo, I admit that you're indeed qualified to challenge me. However, if you want to challenge senior brother Di'in, you're overestimating yourself. The difference between the two of you is like heaven and earth. You've got two things wrong. Su Zimo extended his finger and shook it gently. First, I'm not the one challenging you. You're the one challenging me. Who were you even when I became famous? I'm also the top of the phenomenon ranking. Yi Tiancheng was too young, and the slightest provocation was enough to incur his wrath. Top of the phenomenon ranking? Su Zimo smiled gently. That's because I was not around. If I were, I would wipe you from the phenomenon ranking. Wipe. He spoke as though he was wiping away dust with ease. Second. Su Zimo continued, there is indeed a gap between Di'in and me. 100 years ago, Di'in was chased by me and fled in a sorry state, discarding all his equipment. He did not even dare to return to Myriad Phenomenon City. The difference between us is truly like heaven and earth. Ha ha ha, it's all from 100 years ago. Who knows if it's true or not? Yi Tiancheng laughed sinisterly. Su Zimo, you're old and you can only reminisce about the past. The era that belongs to you is already over. Now that 100 years have passed, it's my era. I'm the #1 perfected lord. That's where you're wrong again. Su Zimo shook his head. 100 years later, since I'm back, I'm now the #1 perfected lord. That title? You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. His words were extremely domineering, and an invisible aura crushed over, causing Yi Tiancheng to feel a sense of pressure. And if I want to use it? Yi Tiancheng glared at Su Zimo menacingly and said word by word. Su Zimo's gaze was sharp as a knife as he said slowly, I'll kill you if you dare taint that title. Chapter 955, Battle Erupts. Chapter 955, Battle Erupts. Kill me? Yi Tiancheng smiled sinisterly and turned to look at Dao Lord Lanyu, who was not far away. He said coldly, today is a personal feud between Chaos Essence Sect and this person. It's not within the scope of the Paragon battle. Dao Lord Lanyu, please don't interfere. In other words, the two of them were going to fight to the death. Dao being Chi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace suddenly stood up and said, "Everyone, don't forget that we don't know if this lad is a human or a demon." Initially, Zephyr Thunder Palace stood by idly. Now that Su Zimo's true identity was exposed, there was no way they would let him off. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, the paragon of Zephyr Thunder Palace died in Night Spirit's hands. In order to snatch the Purple Thunder Manual, perfected Lord Tianming of Zephyr Thunder Palace was turned into a puddle of blood by Su Zimo's demonic technique, and his body and spirit were destroyed. Be it for revenge or for the Purple Thunder Manual, Zephyr Thunder Hall naturally could not sit still after seeing Su Zimo reappear. The Void Reversion of Hellfire Hall said hatefully, "If he was a demon, he sure is evil, since he infiltrated the Thousand Crane Tea Party and schemed for the Supreme Grade Mystic Tea while causing internal strife between the major sections. Sect Master Lan Yu, you should kill right away as a warning to others." Ming Han's throat was crushed by Su Zimo and his essence spirit was damaged. Even if he woke up, it would be difficult for him to regain his former glory. Hellfire Hall hated Su Zimo to the core. "That's right. The Void Reversion of Sword Sect harumphed. I even heard that this lad is sworn siblings with a bunch of demons. If he's not a demon, what is he?" The super sects expressed their stance one after another. Dao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and had no choice but to step forward. Slapping her storage bag, she took out a shining mirror and threw it gently into the air, pointing to it with her finger. A stream of dermic power surged within. Whoosh! The mirror shone brightly and a gigantic beam of light landed on Su Zimo. Demon Revealing Mirror. The Demon Revealing Mirror was a dermic treasure specially created by the Weapon Emperor of the Ancient Era to counter demons. It had no effect on cultivators but was extremely harmful to demons. Legend has it that the true Demon Revealing Mirror could destroy any demon with a single beam of light. It was extremely terrifying. The Demon Revealing Mirrors later on were all replicas. Although they were not as powerful as the original Demon Revealing Mirror, they still had clear effects on demons. Demons had nowhere to hide under the illumination of the Demon Revealing Mirror and would reveal their true forms. Furthermore, their essence spirit and dermic powers would be suppressed. Back in the intermediate ancient battlefield, Glass Palace relied on a few Demon Revealing Mirrors to set up a formation that trapped Su Zimo on the spot. Right now, the mirror in Dao Lord Lan Yu's hands was a replica of the Demon Revealing Mirror. Even so, the Demon Revealing Mirror was a Dao Lord dermic weapon and had an absolute suppressive effect on a nascent soul demon. Leng Ro, Little Fatty, and the others instantly became nervous. However, they soon realized that there was no need for that. Against the light of the Demon Revealing Mirror, Su Zimo stood with his hands behind his back, looking indifferent and unaffected. He did not look like a demon being suppressed at all. After entering nascent soul realm, Su Zimo cultivated two essence spirits. Right now, the black-haired essence spirit was in his consciousness. This was an essence spirit condensed from the top cultivation techniques of the human race, the immortal and Buddhist sections. It was extremely pure and would not be affected at all. As for the scarlet-haired Een spirit, it was hidden in the depths of his consciousness and could not be detected unless someone sent their spirit consciousness in. Upon seeing that, everyone from Zephyr Thunder Hall and Chaos Essence Sect frowned. Could the rumors be fake? Or could it be that this person had some tricks that he could even hide from the Demon Revealing Mirror? Expressionlessly, Dao Lord Lan Yu put away the Demon Revealing Mirror and waved her hand. "Settle your grudges yourselves." Boom! Before the sentence was finished, Yi Tiancheng had already leaped up from his throne. His glabella shone as he conjured hand seals repeatedly and shouted, "Firmament art." Dermic powers were like silk on the fingertips of Yi Tiancheng, weaving a boundless firmament that shrouded towards Su Zimo. Firmament art was a top-grade dermic art of Chaos Essence Sect. The firmaments covered the entire world. Under the envelopment of the firmaments, all living beings would be suppressed. An unimaginable pressure crushed down, as though the entire sky had collapsed and covered the skies. How was that a fight against a human? It was a fight against the heavens and skies. It was not something that human strength could compare against. This is way too scary. Sensing the dermic powers surging in the battlefield, the crowd's expressions changed and they exclaimed softly. In the fight earlier on, many nascent soul paragons released their dermic arts. However, they were nothing but child's play compared to this dermic art. As expected of Yi Tiancheng. Nangong Ling murmured with a shocked expression, to be able to cultivate such immense dermic powers at early stage nascent soul, how strong will he be at late stage or perfected nascent soul? Ru Xian and the others looked worried as well. Even though they were not involved, they still felt immense pressure. It was hard to imagine how Su Zimo, who was at the center of the battlefield, would react to the firmament art. Su Zimo did not move. He merely stood on the spot with his hands behind his back and raised his head slightly, looking at the descending firmament with disdain. He could tell that the dermic art was extremely powerful. However, Yi Tiancheng was far from being able to unleash the power of that dermic art. Firmament art? Su Zimo smiled gently. With a bang, his feet landed on the ground and he rose from the ground, punching towards the firmaments that were crushing down. The crowd burst into an uproar upon the sight of that. Against that dermic art, Su Zimo did not use any dermic weapons, dermic arts, or secret skills. Instead, he chose to fight it with his body. A tiny figure rose against the shroud of the massive firmaments. It looked like a moth flying into flames. However, the collision between the two was earth-shaking. Boom! Su Zimo's fist collided heavily against the descending firmament. Instantly, the world froze. That scene seemed to have frozen. Beneath the firmament, a seemingly tiny figure reached out with a fist as though it wanted to tear through the firmaments and penetrate the world. Crack! 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 Cracks sounded. Under the watchful gazes of countless people, cracks appeared in the firmaments one after another, growing larger and spreading. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky was filled. Shattered. The firmaments shattered. That extremely domineering firmament art was shattered by a single punch from Su Zimo. What a terrifying physique. That person's physique is probably not weaker than divine weapons. A series of exclamations came from the crowd. Well, well, well. Yi Tiancheng reared his head in laughter without any fear in his eyes. Su Zimo, you've truly not disappointed me. Shoo! 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 Swinging his robes, Yi Tiancheng sent a series of cold flashes towards Su Zimo at an extremely fast speed. 49 flying swords tore through the air with sword chi. Ah, it's an entire set of flying swords. Suddenly, the void reversion of ancient array sect said, I remember now. The sect master of Chaos Essence sect paid a visit 10 years ago. This set of flying swords was made personally for him by our sect master. To think that this set of flying swords would be in the hands of Yi Tiancheng. Could it be? Chapter 956, Clash of Phenomenons. Chapter 956, Clash of Phenomenons. Sword Formation Master. Nobody expected Yi Tiancheng to be one of the few extremely rare sword formation masters in the cultivation world. The more flying swords required to create a sword formation, the harder it would be to control the formation and the more power it would possess. Now that Yi Tiancheng had released 49 flying swords and all of them were perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapons, the lethality of this sword formation was unimaginable. Chaos Essence Void Sword Formation. Yi Tiancheng controlled the 49 flying swords and drew a series of trajectories in midair, interweaving and forming formation patterns. Sweeping his gaze across Yi Tiancheng's flying swords, Su Zimo sneered and slapped his storage bag, pulling out a grayish-black mountain. One of the 7 unique treasures, the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Dermic powers surged within Su Zimo's body and he injected it into the Mystic Magnet Mountain before flinging it into the air. The Mystic Magnet Mountain expanded against the wind and crushed down towards the 49 flying swords. Yi Tiancheng's expression changed slightly. Just as the Chaos Essence Void Sword formation was about to be formed, he did not expect his flying swords to move uncontrollably towards the Mystic Magnet Mountain after it descended. Formations would collapse instantly if there was a slightest mistake in their patterns. What more, the 49 flying swords were all completely out of control at this moment. Stabilize. Tiancheng released his massive spirit consciousness in an attempt to control the 49 flying swords. However, the Mystic Magnet Mountain had already descended. Boom! With a loud bang, all 49 flying swords were suppressed beneath the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Imperial Void Seal Technique. Tiancheng's reaction was extremely fast as he conjured hand seals repeatedly and cast them onto the Mystic Magnet Mountain. The dermic seal shone with a mysterious light and almost sealed the power of the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Clang! Clang! The 49 flying swords danced beneath the mountain peak, trying to break free. Humph! Zimo sneered and his eyes flashed with lightning. He conjured hand seals rapidly and rumbling sounds echoed from his body. Electric arcs even flashed on his body. His black hair danced and purple lightning filled the air. Dark clouds surged and covered the skies. Standing in midair, Zimo seemed as though he was in a sea of thunder and lightning with a majestic aura. Purple thunderstorm. Zimo hollered and pointed forward. Streaks of purple thunderbolt rained down from the dark clouds, connecting the firmaments to the earth. They weaved endlessly to form a terrifying purple thunderstorm. It's the Purple Thunder Manual. Dao Bing Chi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace grit his teeth with greed in his eyes. There was a cultivation technique in Zephyr Thunder Hall called the Green Thunder Manual. Be it perfected Lord Tian Ming of Wind Thunder Palace or Dao Bing Chi Guy, both of them were bent on getting back the Purple Thunder Manual because the combination of these two dermic arts was the top cultivation technique, the Void Thunder Manual. Legend has it that when these two cultivation techniques were combined into one, they could create an essence spirit secret skill with shocking might. If I can seize this opportunity to get my hands on the Purple Thunder Manual, I can fuse these two cultivation techniques first. Dao Bing Chi Guy's eyes shone with excitement. This was an opportunity that belonged to him, there was no way he could let this slip. On the battlefield, the purple thunderstorm descended as though it wanted to destroy the world. The storm shrouded the Mystic Magnet Mountain and purple lightning flickered, destroying the seal left behind by Tiancheng's Imperial Void Seal technique swiftly. The 49 flying swords were suppressed by the Mystic Magnet Mountain once more. Not only that, the purple thunderstorm was already moving towards Tiancheng, wanting to engulf him as well. Everyone held their breaths and focused, their eyes filled with shock. It was as though there were only two dazzling figures left in the world. The fight between the two caused the weather to change and the world to quake. This was a fight that far surpassed the knowledge of nascent souls. Vast oceans. Tiancheng finally retracted the contempt in his heart and his eyes turned misty as he mouthed two words. Splash. A vast ocean appeared behind Tiancheng and he seemed to have fused with it. Tiancheng's figure began to blur. Ah, it's his golden core phenomenon. Because of this golden core phenomenon, he was able to sweep through every one of the golden core realm and dominate as the top of the phenomenon ranking. Cries of surprises came from the crowd. As long as cultivators were willing to comprehend and deduce, many golden core phenomenons could be transformed into their personal dermic arts. Of course, the deduction process was extremely long and boring. There were also many paragons who wasted their time without any gains. The vast ocean surged and engulfed the purple thunderstorm instantly. The seawater churned and surged towards Zimo. It was only now that Zimo's eyes truly flashed with a hint of surprise. Interesting. Zimo muttered softly. All of a sudden, a massive being appeared beneath his feet. It had 4 legs and 2 heads. The being carried a gigantic shell that was filled with mysterious ravines. It was ancient and seemed as though it could contain the secrets of the world. The back of the armor supported the heavens and the earth with its 4 legs, moving against the sea continuously. Groar. The turtle and snake reared their heads and let out a long howl that shone with divine light. Heaven and earth rumbled. The phenomenon of the turtle and snake, the black tortoise, had descended. To think that I would be able to see this phenomenon again 100 years later. Hang Qiuyu lamented. It was as though he had returned to the unforgettable time of the phenomenon clash between the paragons of myriad phenomenon city. Jian Wuzong remarked sourly, they're both golden core phenomenons from the top of the phenomenon ranking. There's not much difference. There's too much difference. Hang Qiuyu shook his head and did not explain further. That was because there would soon be an outcome to this clash of phenomenons 100 years after. Su Zimo stood on the turtle and snake, going against the current. The distance between the two of them narrowed constantly. Yi Tiancheng's expression did not change as his figure turned increasingly illusory. Bright moon. By the time he said that, his figure had already vanished above the vast ocean. Thereafter, a bright moon rose from the horizon, scattering silver rays onto the surface of the sea, sparkling like a painting. Yi Tiancheng had completely fused into his phenomenon. Vast ocean, bright moon. First on the phenomenon ranking. This was also a golden core phenomenon created by Yi Tiancheng that was unprecedented. Vast ocean, bright moon? Su Zimo smiled gently and his figure blurred for a moment before vanishing as well. Flames raged on the massive turtle shell and a green lotus grew out. Under the heat of the flames, the green color gradually faded and shone with a bedazzling golden light. Swoosh! The golden lotus flower suddenly moved. It smashed towards the moon that was rising in the skies. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Cracks appeared on the bright moon. Instantly, the picturesque scene was shattered and Yi Tiancheng's figure fell out, staggering backwards with a pale face and disheveled clothes. Su Zimo's figure appeared as well, his green robes fluttering without a speck of dust. The fight between the two phenomenons had come to an end. The difference between them was clear. Su Zimo strode forward and said indifferently, "Even if you're the real bright moon, I can suppress you all the same." You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.